Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else, to the first week of Season 11 of the Blue Otter Platinum League. We have 10 amazing teams that are beginning their respective journeys tonight. For our first streamed match of the season, we will be joining Subatomic Gaming Proton and Conduit UMAD in their best of three, their inaugural best of three of the season. We have a brand new patch for the new season as well. It's all lining up for us very, very nicely. And of course, new casters. My name is Chris Crewman, and I am joined here in the BOL streaming channel by the absolutely incredible Mr. Alls. Alls, how's your Wednesday going so far?
Man, it's absolutely great to be here in particular, Crewman. I just love working with BOL because these teams always seem to pull out something fun. They always seem to have a great time, and it always leads to some great games for us, and especially with the teams that we have in Plat Division this split. It seems like we've got a lot of great competition ahead of us. So I'm feeling great, I'm
Absolutely.
happy, and I'm looking forward to a good best of three here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. There have been a lot of people feeling like we have a lot of really strong competitive rosters here, at least on paper, for this season of the Platinum League. And, it's definitely going to be interesting tonight with the new patch as well. We've heard some rumblings in the client chat about potential AP Malphite lock-in. We'll just have to wait and see, guys. Don't want to tease too much here, but Alls, what are your thoughts in general on 14.5 here, this brand new patch that just dropped last night? Is there anything in this patch that's really standing out to you as being especially noteworthy?
Well, no bird. Azir is disabled across the competitive scene because of the shimmy disappear bug. So we will not be seeing that, and that's going to be actually a little bit rough for both these teams because I'm seeing a little bit of Azir in these match histories, Crewman. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Azir has been fairly powerful really over the entirety of his competitive career since he's been launched. So it does leave a little bit of a gap here, and it'll be interesting to see how it gets filled.
Yeah, definitely one of those evergreen mid laners that does kind of always have a place in any given meta. So yeah, there's plenty of other strong options in the game right now as well. The Orianna's still feeling pretty powerful. We saw some Syndra actually yesterday in the games that we were casting Alls. That's looking pretty strong right now as well. Then you have some more champions that exist on the fringes of the meta to try and counter that. If anybody's really good assassin player, for example, then maybe we could see some Akali's or some Yone's creeping in or something of that nature. As far as 14.5 is concerned, we are getting some nerfs to AD Twisted Fate. That's obviously not really the most common build in the mid lane per se, but some buffs to Veigar and to Vex, a little bit of AP scaling buffs there. So, I don't know if we'll see them necessarily, but it's something to keep in mind perhaps.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see how some of these other buffs kind of shake out, especially down towards the bot lane. We've been seeing a lot of Senna and a lot of Maokai down there recently. They've targeted some buffs down there to try and take that out, and they're not very strong buffs. It's, a little bit of movement speed here, a second of cooldown here. So, while it's definitely not nothing, I'm curious to see if it has the intended effect or if it's not enough to knock them down.
Yeah, I mean, what was that Senna nerf? It was like 5% of the AD scaling on her Q or something. It's like, I don't think that really changes too much. I mean, we'll see, but doesn't really feel like a very impactful nerf to me. The Maokai nerfs is kind of interesting. They did also nerf Slay, of course, on 14.5 here, so that could impact the Maokai support a little bit as well, but again, yeah, those nerfs don't really feel like they're going to be that significant. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what these teams do decide to prioritize. Are there any players in particular on the Rift for this first best of three of the season also that you're going to be keeping an eye on? Do you feel like it's easy to identify, a main carry player or, a captain maybe on either one of these squads?
Well, I'm looking at Chong Solmo, and I'm looking at their match history, and I see 10 straight wins on Bard. Chong Solmo has played nothing but Bard in their last 10 games, and they have not lost a game. That's pretty
Okay.
scary because Bard is one of those champions that is very difficult mechanically to get into because he has such a strange playstyle. But the moment that you get good at it, that means that you are very good at understanding when you need to roam. Because Bard's entire job is screw bot lane, I am helping everywhere else. So that is a lot
Yeah.
of the fundamentals that supports tend to struggle with in this elo and a little bit higher even, I would argue. So seeing that for SG is pretty powerful here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this bot lane does.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be impactful. I'm guessing if the win streak is looking that good, I think a Bard ban could be pretty likely here, at least for game number 1. But if he does manage to get his hands on that Bard, that would be really exciting to see what he's able to get done with the pick. It is, definitely, as you were kind of just saying, one of those more unorthodox supports, right? That does kind of play a little bit differently, and it does really require you to have a firm grasp of those fundamentals, right? So, as well. So, it'll be interesting to see, if we do get any spicy picks tonight, anything that's really coming out of left field that's really going to be unexpected for us. Here, Platinum is kind of it's kind of no man's land, honestly, in terms of the ranked ladder. I mean, you're
Yeah.
better than the average player if you're Platinum, but you're not really high elo either, right? So you're kind of in this weird middle area. It'll be interesting to see, how much these drafts kind of mirror what we see in pro play and, the highest competitive leagues, all around the world, or if we see more of like these solo queue pub stompy kind of champions or stuff that's not necessarily meta.
Yeah,
I always say
absolutely.
that at the beginning of a new season like this, it can be really beneficial to just kind of default to comfort, to try and get yourself off on that right foot, right? It can be so important. These are not the longest seasons. I don't actually know how many weeks we are going to run for here, alls before the playoffs. Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
We will check here, but I do believe it is a full round robin, so at least 9 games.
Yeah, okay. So that's a decent number of weeks. That's a decently long season, but still, getting off to a strong start can be incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, you mentioned looking at some of the other levels of league that we're seeing around the amateur and pro scene, and I'm thinking about NACLOQs because those are
Mm.
going on right now, and we've been seeing some pretty wildly variant styles of play, even at the highest level. We're seeing tanks brushing shoulders with bruisers. We're seeing melee mid laners coming up against hyperscalers. We're seeing all kinds of chaos in the bot lane. And crewman, it's just that fun part of the start of the year where Riot doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They haven't figured out their items or their new champions,
Did they
and
ever
all
know?
of us just get to, well, let's not go that far.
Yes, there's certainly a lot of experimentation happening right now, Alls. It is very, very exciting. And what else is exciting is we are already into our game number 1 draft here. SG Proton on the blue side, Conduit UMAD on the red. And through this first ban phase, Proton's banned away the Swain, the Smolder, and the Maokai. So no support Maokai in this one. And there goes that Bard banned away by UMAD that you were hinting at, Alls, as well as the Caitlyn and the Ashe. Wukong, the freshly buffed Wukong, locked away here on B1.
Yeah, we've seen a fair bit of Wukong recently, even pre-buffs. He's just incredibly powerful as a jungler with his gap close abilities with the Nimbus Strike and with the disruptive power of the Cyclone. So having that little bit of extra buff to kind of nudge junglers in the direction of picking this champion is huge. It gives a lot of opportunity to Nation here to, or Soul Reaver rather, to take that for a long, long ride.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be very, very exciting to see. It could also be the top lane Wukong, right? In theory. That is
True.
more the target of the buffs, actually. We're towards the top lane Wukong as opposed to the jungle Wukong. So, keeping that alive is a little bit of a flex pick, I think, could be a bit of an angle for SG here as well. Jin Zhao and the Karma have come out in response. And now the Talia and the Varus locking away the mid and bot carries for Proton, clearly putting some priority on these specific picks.
You know, I'm a little bit worried about this Talia pick here. I understand why you go ahead and take it. You assume that this Karma is going to be going towards that mid lane, right? It makes sense. You might as well assume that because Karma has been so strong there, especially with the Malignants just blasting through people in the early game, and Talia can go into it, but then you run yourself the risk of this, where Hui comes out and you're in a bad matchup unless you move that Talia to the jungle.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing worth mentioning here, Alls, is the Talia is Alphate's most played mid laner for SG Proton, most played this season. 16 games, 56% win rate, so there's clearly a little bit of comfort there. That is a really good point, of course, that they didn't have confirmation that the Karma was going into that mid lane matchup, so they did leave themselves exposed to that Wei counterpick, which, of course, Conduit UMAD have elected to go for. This does mean that we have a little bit of asymmetry in terms of these bans. As we can see, SG Proton going to be targeting that 80 carry pool to try and remove some more options for domination down there. And in return, Conduit UMAD looking to ban away one top laner as well as one support option in that Nautilus that they do not want to see paired alongside the Varus.
Yeah, the one that I don't see banned that would be very easy to pick up and very safe right now with what you have elsewhere on the team is that Xayah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Senna, actually. But, tell us more about the Xayah.
I don't love the Senna so much with the Karma lane. Like, yeah, okay, you can poke, but you're into a Varus. I don't think that's an incredibly great matchup, but we're just getting a complete pivot here. We're going with the MF because, sure, it's the same idea. It's a ton of poke. You're just trying to outrange the Varus and stay at an area where you can get away from the piercing arrows just by walking a little bit to the side, make it real hard for him to land that poke, and SG Proton's forced to turn a little bit here. They're going to have to go with a little bit more of an engaged support to match, which I feel like so far Conduit's been out drafting pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. They're feeling good about that mid lane matchup, I think. Misfortune Karma can be really powerful in the bot lane as well. So the Braum, has come through to kind of defend against what can be a very threatening duo. He's going to be trying to block as many of those Karma Qs and, Misfortune Ultimate, the bullet time. If the Braum is in the right position, if he saved the cooldown on the Unbreakable, can be a good counter there. Mordekaiser now, last pick of this Game 1 draft for SG Proton. Does confirm, of course, the Wukong going into the jungle, matched up against that Jin Zhao. Now the R5 pick for the top laner of Conduit. Let's see what Gav Dougal Fresh is going to decide to go for.
That's a Karma top.
That is indeed a Karma top. All right, so the Blitzcrank, the support counter pick into Braum Varus. Your just initial reactionals.
That's a swerve. It makes sense for Panda Boat here. Panda Board. As they do play a lot of heavy engage. But by the same token, Blitzcrank is one of those champs where you have one ability. Your job is to hook.
True.
You miss that hook, or are not in the area, you are in trouble. So this comes back to the Chong Solmo question of, do you, as a support, know how to roam and affect other lanes? It will be very interesting to see how Conduit plays this. And that Karma Mordekaiser top lane, that's going to be not great for Proton at the start, but once you start hitting that 11 to 13 levels mark, Mordekaiser can just walk all over that Karma. She'll be able to heal, sure, but she's never going to force him out of lane. He's going to be able to split push to infinity. So you're going to have to start sending the Hui to match, and that doesn't feel great for your team fight here, crewman.
Yeah, certainly can start to look a little bit difficult. If your Wei is now stuck in a side lane, he's definitely one of the main damage threats on this composition. At least Karma, I think, is going to have a relatively good time in the early laning phase. Mordekaiser does tend to prefer going into melee matchups. That's kind of where he's most comfortable, at least in the early game. So, the Karma should be able to, I think, in theory, keep him down at least for a little while. And so maybe, if the Mordekaiser doesn't have that accelerated early game, maybe he doesn't get to the point later on where he does become that really big side lane threat. Maybe that's doesn't become as much of a problem, but, we'll just have to wait and see, as it does feel like that is a potential danger for the side of UMAD. I did also want to point out, Mordekaiser is a little bit of a comfort pick over there for Chai. There's a lot of comfort, really. I mean, of course, on both sides. Let's see here. I want to look into those Wei games, actually, for the mid laner, Mr. Messiah. Let's see what kind of mastery we have on that one. Yeah, Wei most played this season. Again, 12 games, 58%. So, yeah, a lot of comfort on both sides, which I think does make sense for game number 1 here.
Yeah, this is your first time in a new league. You haven't seen how these people are playing as this particular 5-stack, so go with what's comfortable for sure. I'd like to see more tanks. I'm a tank main. I love tanks. There is half a tank in this game. Both teams combined. Braum and Blitzcrank, they're supports. They don't count. Mordekaiser, half a tank. But outside
he does tend to build a
nothing.
lot of AP, doesn't he?
And that makes me sad inside.
Yeah. Especially when you have so many of these long-range threats, like the Varus, the Wei, the Misfortune, even Talia. All of these champs do really benefit quite a lot from having a big front line to stand behind. So that is definitely something that I agree. We do feel like we're a little bit light on that on the front line this game. There is a lot of ways to create these opportunities for both sides, regardless of just setting up like a front-to-back team fight, right? For the side of Conduit, UMAD, you can look for angles, obviously, with the Blitzcrank. You look for those hooks on priority targets. And then for SG Proton, you can try to catch people out with the Chains of Corruption. Wukong, if he can get into some creative angles, can try and sneak his way into the back line as well, and just try and set up a favorable fights in that way. So I do definitely think that there are still angles, right, for both of these teams to play out, even later on into the game, when traditionally you would see more value come from, that front line, giving time for the carries to have uptime on their damage, right, and get out that DPS. But it'll be interesting to see how, if one of these teams is better at playing out sort of a more hit and run, a more skirmishy sort of style, then they could definitely end up with a big edge here with these drafts that we have found.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to getting onto the Rift and seeing how these guys pilot their teams, because they've drafted some very interesting shapes that they're gonna have to fill out here with their individual play. But crewman, I think unless you have any final thoughts, it's time for us to step aside and let these guys load onto the Rift.
Well, also, before we go into that break, I did actually want to get a little bit of a prediction from you. Do you actually have any preference between these two drafts? If you were in this game, which side would you rather be playing on?
I gotta say Proton. I think Mordekaiser is just going to be inevitable, and I think the combined power of Varus Talia behind him is going to be enough to carry them through the day. I think Karma's going to fall off, and the Xin Zhao's not going to have enough of an effect. But
all right,
we'll have to see.
We will indeed. The R5 Blitzcrank, definitely a little bit of a curveball. We'll see if Conduit UMAD know what they're doing, or if SG Proton's slightly more orthodox drafting style will reign supreme here for game number 1. It's time for opening day, guys, to kick off right after this break. We'll see you soon. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Rift for the first time in Season 11 of the Blue Otter Platinum League. Once again, we do have Subatomic Gaming Proton on the blue side, Conduit U Mad on the red to start things off. And we do have a Blitzcrank in the game. What will he do at level 1?
Well, you think Blitzcrank, you think level 1 cheese, which is exactly why Conduit is not level 1 cheesing. Because
Against the expectations of their opponents, I see.
absolutely SG Proton is prepared for it, so why would you try and burn yourself there? Just play it safe, do the 5-point, let SG Proton be the one to stack and waste their time.
All right. Well, that does appear to be the call. We do have an Asian. Going for a little bit of a ward here onto the enemy blue buff. Nothing much else will be happening here at the level 1 mark. Sol Reaver does seem a little bit perturbed by the fact that the Jin did manage to get that ward down. He's not really going to find any vision in response and will, in fact, be starting up on that top side, providing full information over to an Asian and the rest of UMAD.
Yeah, I mean, it should be particularly surprising. It's not like you're gonna gank a Karma level 3. So, makes sense to go ahead, clear top to bottom here if you're Soul Reaver, and try to get this bot lane ahead. Blitzcrank does not play super well from behind, and a misfortune into a Braum from behind just feels utterly miserable. So if you can turn this lane around real early, you're in great shape.
Very true, very true. Does feel like there is, a decent amount of early game power, or that's an early flash out from Al Fade. Forced to burn that was an Asian. Going for the level 2 gank into the mid lane, just Raptors mid gank. Talk about unorthodox.
Yeah, that's a real fast gank there, and it does pay off with the flash, but now the clear path is going to be a little bit awkward for Nation. You only have that Raptors down, you're going down to clear out your buff, and we can see on the minimap, Soul Reaver's taking full advantage of this, going to go in, going to steal that red buff, and it's going to be now the question of, does Nation read this correctly and go for the vertical jungle?
It looks like he will. Some intelligent jungling here on both sides. Reaver able to identify the Jhin had only taken one camp. Able to get in there for the red buff steal. That's a hook in the bottom lane. He's Braum. He's fine.
Yeah,
never mind.
That did all of 20 damage. I'm sure the Braum is concerned.
Yeah, very, very concerned, clearly. But yes, as we were saying, very interesting jungle pathing early on here. They will be creating across those red buffs pretty much simultaneously. And an Asian going to get the double Raptor camp to start things off. Does feel pretty good, but Wukong now.
Wukong and Braum.
For Reaver. And the sandwich coming in from Trunks-Somo's Braum as well. Messiah going to get hit by the seismic shove and the concussive blow stacked up. This will be the first blood going over. And it's Soul Reaver that picks up the gold.
And we're not done with the play. Nation in trouble as
really
well. Does have
spot.
the flash, but with 3 members closing, this is almost certainly a free kill.
Yeah, he has nowhere to go. Gonna get hit by the shove there. They're gonna give this kill over to the Taliyah. Perhaps she's out of mana, so that makes it a little interesting. An Asian is going to end up flashing, which will get the flash out from the Wukong, but that kill will still go over, and now a very early 2-0 Wukong for the side of SG Proton.
Yeah, and this comes back to what I was talking about in draft about this Bard play from Trunks-Somo. Because that was a very intelligent roam, very good job working together with the team to read the map and see that it was a perfect chance to roam up towards Messiah and make that a 3-person gank to truly secure it. It was a little bit of good luck, good fortune that Nation happened to have overextended in the invade there, but it's because the read was there on the first kill that they even had the opportunity for the second one. So those are the kind of advantages that you have when you have these supports that know their map.
I think that's a great point, Alls. Definitely a really nice roam timing there from Trunks-Somo, as you would expect to see on a champion like Bard, right? Not as common on a champion like Braum, but clearly this is the player, right? Able to identify that this opportunity is going to be available, and just really nice timing from that SG support as the back will complete for the Mordekaiser in the top lane.
Yeah, they're Panda Boat trying to make the same thing happen, trying to get a kill onto Chai. they're gonna get enough pressure up here to get the grubbies, which, you know, not an awful trade. That's a whole lot of extra pushing power if you can start hitting those turrets. But unfortunate, not able to get quite the same impact, and Soul Reaver, reading it quite well, is going to be able to take the 1-for-1 trade and get that early Drake.
Yeah, so a trade-off of these early neutrals going to feel decent for both sides. Honestly, for the side of Conduit, I don't really know if they're going to end up being able to get too much value out of the Kevins this game. They don't really have a strong side lane threat, as level 5 Mordekaiser, very gankable still at this point in the game, and Nation will find the knock-up, and Pandaboat on the way over as well. Oh, that hook was not on the money. Oh, that's very unfortunate for the side of Conduit, and the Mordekaiser will just kind of be able to walk that one off.
Yeah, and the pressure that Pandaboat is getting up here is not really worth it when you look at what's going on the other side. Domination struggling down here in the bot lane, down 15 CS, has the enemy jungler floating here. This is a great setup for a dive if they want to take it. Domination in a whole lot of danger, so doesn't feel great when you don't get that roam timing right and leave your ADC high and dry.
Yeah, not the biggest of minion waves, so the dive will not end up coming through, and Domination will go ahead and take over to level 6, at least, thanks to that solo experience that he's getting from his support not being in the lane. But certainly, you know, it does feel quite bad for Misfortune to not be able to have that strong early game, right? It is a lot of the reason why you pick the champion, to have that strong laning phase, and it hasn't really worked out that way so far.
Yeah, and as I'm looking down at the scoreboard, all that pressure up top has done nothing either. Chai is absolutely bodying Dougie Fresh in terms of CS at this point. And Pandaboat's in trouble here as well. Gonna get stunned up by the Braum passive and take a ton of damage from that piercing arrow, yeah.
And not quite enough damage to finish off the Blitzcrank, who's still only level 3. Pandaboat really trying to make these roams work, but doesn't have the same timings as Chong Solmo, who's managed to pick up quite a lot of this experiences, you know, closing in on that level 6 mark on the Braum. So Blitzcrank falling very, very quickly behind the pace of this game. You know, at least there is some compensation with the fact that Blitzcrank doesn't really scale that well with gold, but experience is a different story.
Yeah.
Nice shove in the mid lane there.
Having that lightning field, having the extra little bits of damage in fights. I know it sounds like nothing. Oh yeah, you get a little bit of lightning on your auto attacks, but it's enough to stack up, and it helps with the wave control too, honestly, which could really, really benefit this bot lane, which is really constantly pushed in. Yomi and Chong Solmo have, I don't think, left the red side of this lane since 4 minutes in.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate is one thing, but just the base stats that you get from levels, right? We saw in that last trade, Pandaboat almost going down just a few auto attacks and a single piercing arrow due to the fact that he was 2 levels behind the Varus.
Very true.
Yeah, Karma's just existing in this top lane, doing Karma things. The way ultimate is going to come out in mid. The Spiraling Despair will connect, but Messiah still having to flash away underneath the turret to try and keep himself safe, as there's another nicely timed roam from Chong.
Yeah, they are now walking into a little bit of a crunch here as Pandaboat lands the hook.
Okay, gonna get the hook onto Soul Reaver. Wukong gonna go for the Cyclone. Doesn't have the Warrior Trickster, though, I guess. Does manage to get off the R2, and the shove is decent onto 2, and they will be able to trade it back onto the Xin Zhao. Now the Weaver's Wall going to come out. A nice blast going to get Pandaboat back towards the turret, and the Blitzcrank will survive. Just a 1-for-1. But honestly, since it was the side of Conduit setting up that play, I'm sure they were hoping for more.
Yeah, and that is a little bit awkward as well, handing that kill over to Yomi. That's an ADC that scales very well with the Varus here. Already has a significant advantage over the MF, so just making it worse here. Want to check, how much gold does he have in pocket? A bit. Just nearly 2,000 gold in pocket. That's going to be a very scary back.
Seeing a little bit of pocket change for the Varus there. No, yeah, he's in a really good spot in this game. And, you know, we've seen Varus priority all over the world and all kinds of elos, all levels of play, right? Be really, really high because the lethality build is so strong on him, right? And with the current state of the lethality items, it just does tend to work really, really well. As the second spawn of the Kevins under fire right now, Reaver hoping to secure these, making an even 3-for-3 across the board. And it looks like Nation's not feeling confident to move in here and contest. There is that blast cone there that they could attempt to utilize, but just not really feeling like they would out in the fight.
Yeah, that's a great read by SG Proton to go ahead and take that. And, you don't really need all 3 grubbies there to get the denial that you want. If you can take away 2 and deny the Twitch chatters from spawning when you auto-attack the turret, you're in great shape. Because that's the extra pushing pressure and the extra turret shots that you wouldn't otherwise have. Getting all 3, it's just a nice little bonus. Might as well finish what you started, but anything in the denial is a great denial.
Certainly. We are seeing our second dragon now spawn onto the rift as an ocean second. So likelihood of a strong dragon soul this game quite high, alls.
Yeah, I'm a tank main. I love the ocean soul. I love being able to live forever, but a lot of folks think it's a weak soul, and overall, I can't exactly deny it. And as we're looking at the map, SG Proton, once again, first mover advantage. They have good wards deep. They have Panda Boat and Nation zoned off. It's going to be quite easy for Soul Reaver to take this while the rest of the team just runs interference, and I don't think Nation's even going to try to contest this at this point.
No, it's just not a fight you can really go for. As we can see, Chong Somo, level 6 on the Braum, access to that Glacial Fissure. Not the same story for Panda Boat, still needing that 6th level to get access to the ultimate, and that will mean the second dragon going over and the Infernal Soul going to arrive.
Yeah, Messiah now in a little bit of an awkward spot, forced to sprint away from 3, but this does leave Yomi alone. Could they be looking for a dive onto the Varus? He does have the chains and the flash, but no ghost and no support makes this a very dangerous fight for him.
Yomi playing very respectfully, far back behind the turret, just trying to farm up as much of those creeps as he can with his abilities, clearly aware of that possibility also that he could get dove on that timing, but playing respectfully enough to not allow that play to come through from Conduit. Just able to farm up most of that wave, still dead even in CS, even after getting denied a couple of minions there.
Yeah, the gold fairly even as well, just 400 separates the teams, which is chump change at this point. It's all about the pressure that has been shown. Those 2 dragons to nil. The vision lines that we have are what's putting SG in the lead, but we're starting to reach the point now where teams are going to think about leaving this lane phase. And crewman, do you think that Conduit has an angle here to try and turn this game around when they start finding those many-man fights?
Well, I mean, I think there's always a chance, right? That is the thing about Blitzcrank, is there's always kind of that possibility that you get the key target, the priority target at a critical moment, and you can, kind of snowball that into an objective or a team fight or whatever, and turn the game around in that way. So I don't think we can ever completely count out this Conduit composition, pending, some absurd gold advantage or crazy deficit of that nature. But I do think it is going to be difficult because the side of SG Proton have had such great map control, such great movements so far, as we do see Reaver going for the play down here in the bot lane, but N-Nation is here to match. The hook will bring in the Braum, who puts up the door in the wrong direction, and the concussive blows will still stack up. We will get the knock up onto N-Nation. Glacial Fissure, very nice. Onto 3, and the Chain of Corruption actually getting a ton of value. Panda is getting stacked up on one more auto attack, and there it is. Yomi picks up number 2, and Asian forced to flash back underneath the turret, and it is going to be SG Proton winning out in the play.
Yeah, Alf also picked up the solo kill in the mid lane, so now has the ability to rotate down. Nation and Domination have very, very low health bars, so this is dangerous. That Weaver's Wall could come out at any time and pick up another couple of kills here. So they're going to have to back off and give a ton of pressure here to crash this wave. Maybe even start thinking about fully taking that turret here if they stick around long enough. No, it's going to force out the TP, in fact, from Hui.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, honestly, for the side of Conduit, the turret plates did just fall off. So there's not going to be any additional value there going over to the Varus, but still, picking up that extra kill, gonna feel really nice. And I actually completely missed that solo kill in the mid lane, but that's obviously pretty fantastic for Proton as well.
Yeah, that's some great gold onto the Taliyah here. 1-0-3 is feeling pretty all right. Got the first item completion. Hui still working on his. They are going to give up the Rift Herald here, which, has felt significantly weaker after the season changes, but still allows you to break open one of these turrets. And crewman, where do you think they're going to put it?
I mean, mid is kind of the most common suspect in terms of Shelly drop locations. It does tend to be that mid lane tier 1 just being the highest value. Okay, Hook lands in the jungle. Soul Reaver with the Warrior Trickster and a Blast Cone to try and create some space. Has the Flash as well to get over the wall. The Flash follow for domination. They will be able to take down the Wukong. A lot of resources committed there, but they do get a much needed kill for the side of UMAD.
Yeah, that's a great catch, and will potentially give them a little bit of room to snowball with this Rift Herald. Or instead, they're going to go ahead and reset. Might as well, I suppose, but it's just Reaver that they've been able to catch out. They haven't been able to get any of the other priority targets, so still feeling a little bit awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, but still with this composition, right, with Jhin, Karma, Blitzcrank, right, you want to kind of be playing a tempo game, right? You want to be putting pressure on the map, trying to find these advantages in odd number situations, and they do need to find a lot more of that, I think, to try and get a handle on this game before Infernal Soul starts to become a possibility, as Wukong has, of course, respawned back out onto the map, right now clearing out the Krug camp down there in his own jungle, as the rest of the team moves into the South River to try to establish some vision control ahead of this first Infernal Dragon.
And it looks like Conduit's just going to give this up. Blitzcrank and Misfortune are not moving over towards the pit. It's just Nation and Messiah in the area, so they're giving up Soul, or the Drake to get to Soul Point here, which,
well, they're going to drop Shelly now in the mid lane. They are starting to move in. Also, they're just a little bit late to the play, I think, is kind of the situation, as a Nation is hoping to force his way in. A nice seismic shove, though, to push back the Jin Zhao. Will they just look to burst down the Dragon? It looks like that might be the cause. A lot of space being bought by the rest of the team, but they took too long to finish, and the bullet time comes out. It's absolutely massive from Domination, and Talia with no flash is going to get taken down. Desperately, Reaver almost able to get one back, but not able to do it, and it's absolute wipe in the team fight as Conduit UMAD clean it up despite losing out on the objective.
Yeah, I suppose I spoke a little bit too soon. I just didn't expect that SG would be so split on that. They couldn't decide whether they were going to go for the fight or go to finish the Drake, and they just ended up waffling in the middle of that bullet time for pretty much the entire duration. And without any health bars, you can't win games. Now, Dougie Fresh a little bit
trapped in the death realm right now. Doesn't have anywhere else to go. Trying to buy a little bit more time with the Inspire Shield. One more Obliterate would seal the deal, but the Death's Grasp doesn't quite have enough range. And no flash, of course, on the Mordekaiser's running the Teleport Ghost for Chai. Not able to close that distance, and Dougie Fresh is just being Karma, living his best life.
Yeah. Off of those 3 kills in the Drake fight as well, Conduit able to pick up 2 full turrets, the mid and bot. That's a ton of gold in their pockets. They're now suddenly up 3,000, and this Misfortune has 2 fully completed items. I mean, there's no better way to get back in the game than something crazy like that.
Absolutely. That was a big swing in favor of Conduit. But they do still have to contend, right, with the possibility of this Infernal Soul coming through so powerful on champions like Varus, like Talia, that can get their damage out from such long range and have so much burst damage as well. It'd be so dangerous to play into that.
I think you're forgetting one champion who really makes the best use of Infernal Soul, who hasn't yet had an effect on this game, and that's Chai's Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser is pretty much able to pop that passive of the Infernal Soul on cooldown, so that's incredibly powerful in these fights.
Assuming he's in melee range of someone, right?
Well,
that is a little bit of a caveat there. And there aren't really that many melee champions, as previously discussed, on this Conduit composition. But certainly your point is well taken, Alls, that he can get a lot of value out of that in the right situation. But yes, as you also mentioned, very quiet game so far for Chai's Mordekaiser. To be expected, usually into the Karma, which is generally considered a neutralizing pick, as Panda Boat just gonna yoink a red buff that does end up getting stolen away by the rest of the team.
No, that was taken by Reaver.
Up, I believe. Oh,
Reaver
actually,
smited over the wall.
It was still secured. Was it even the Braum that got the last hit on that one? Nice Warrior Trickster.
it was the smite over the wall. Chomp Slomo just got the spare buff.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, it definitely feels good for Reaver there to be able to secure his own red. And we can see Conduit trying to put on the pressure, right? 'Cause clearly, they understand the strengths of their composition. They know they need to be playing sort of a high-tempo game, putting the pressure on their opponents. But I'm not convinced it's enough, Alls. We'll have to see how this next Dragon fight goes. I think that's really going to be the sort of the key turning point in this game.
Yeah, the problem here for Proton now is, yeah, you did win the early game pretty heavily. You had strong advantages and took away a lot of the perceived power of this Conduit roster. But then you immediately throw it away by waffling in a fight and giving this Misfortune an enormous lead over the rest of the map.
Right.
So now, even if you play the rest of these fights better, you're still going to be stat checked a little bit just by the sheer power of the Misfortune. So it becomes a whole lot harder for them to play optimally here.
Certainly, yeah, and I think realistically, they just do need to be more decisive, right? Clearly, the call in the previous fight was to just try and stall, the rest of or stall Conduit so that they could buy time for Reaver to finish off the dragon. But it just took a little bit too long, and the stalling ended up resulting in an absolutely devastating fight in favor of Conduit. So I think just a little bit more decisiveness from the side of Proton would go a long way. Just make sure you're going for the same play together as a team, as we do see this dragon spawning very, very soon. And Conduit with river control at the moment. Mid control, though, going the way of Proton. And we are past the 20-minute mark as well, also. Baron isn't something else that does have to be considered.
Yeah, front-to-back fight here, potentially awkward for Conduit if they can't get a good hook from Panda Boat. Forcing the flash out of Alf here on that Talia. That's pretty huge, as now the Drake is spawning, and SG's going to have to force their way in if they really want to contest this, but it's just first Drake. You can give this up and not super lose out here.
They could do that, and they don't really have position. They're going to try and force their way in. The hook lands onto the flashless Talia, who does manage to stay alive for a while. The counter engage from Reaver, pretty good. Manages to get the Cyclone onto the back line. Eventually, a Nation able to get in there and take down the Talia, and it does look like Conduit are going to be able to emerge victorious in the team fight. Reaver went so deep, looking to lock down that back line, but there was nobody able to follow up for the Wukong, and now it's only Chai left standing in this fight. Does manage to take one with him. Finally takes down the Karma for the first time this game, but that is going to be another team fight win for Conduit UMAD, and they will pick up their first Infernal.
Why, oh why, crewmen, are we having the carry walk in front of the tanks? That is the question that SG Proton has to answer, and the correct answer is you don't. You never walk in front of your tanks, especially not when there is a Blitzcrank on the enemy team that has already forced out your flash. Yeah. It's, again, that little bit of SG Proton just doesn't quite know how they want to take these fights. And since they're waffling back and forth, since everybody's not on the same page, they're paying for it with unnecessary kills, with bad calls, with questionable positioning, and it's leaving them now in a 4,500 gold hole. They could have backed off and just gone to Drake or Baron while Nation was focusing that Drake down. They could have made advantages for themselves elsewhere, but now they're playing even deeper on the back foot.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest takeaway for me, Alls. The team fighting is one thing. Yes, Alphate mispositioned a little bit there on the Talia, but it can be difficult in the moment to keep track of, where the Blitzcrank is standing while you're trying to get the damage out and get this poke down onto the priority targets. But the really big thing for me is the fact that there were absolutely better plays available for SG Proton in that situation, right? They didn't have to force their way into that river to try and contest that dragon. They could have just pushed mid. They could have threatened Baron. They could have done any number of other things. But they just kind of felt like they opted in to the play that Conduit wanted them to go for, and then were punished.
Yeah. The good thing for SG Proton here, and perhaps the bad for Conduit, is despite these couple of team fights that have gone so heavily in their favor, they only have 2 turrets. They haven't taken an inner turret yet.
Okay.
From SG Proton.
There's a way to Death Realm right now, but he is going to be able to get back underneath the turret, and we're actually totally fine. Sorry to interrupt you all. So
nah, you're fine. The point is, cutting through inner and inhibitor turrets takes a lot of time. Even at this 25-minute mark, you're not going to take those turrets very quickly. So that will give SG Proton one last safety belt, even if they screw up this fight around the Baron, to come back, stall out the Baron, and look for something else. Beautiful hook.
Gets the hook on the real Wukong and will force out the Cyclone. Oh, thankfully Chunk Somo is there with the door to prevent that bullet time from finishing off his jungler, but a very close call there for Reaver, and a nice prediction from the Panda Boat.
Yeah, that's one of those where you think you're predicting, and then you worry that you're not, and you're not sure whether you're just lucky or a god, as Alp is now caught out. Yomi in similar trouble. This could be bad.
Oh, yeah, that is looking like a very dead Talia on my screen. Going to get pushed back by the Crescent Guard, taken down by the Misfortune. Messiah, though, on the flank is going to get traded back, but now it does seem that SG Proton hung around a little bit too long in this jungle that didn't really belong to them. And that is going to mean a 3-for-1 fight once again in favor of Conduit. You mad? They're on to the Baron.
Yeah, a little bit of an awkward TP by Chai there at the end as well. Wanted to join that fight, but was just way too late and would have been better off flanking. So now they're forced to try and find a way to force him off, and they might have it. There's not very much health bar.
You know, at least there is no wave. That's a nice hook. It is going to bring the Varus into dangerous territory. And Asian, though, doesn't have the audacious charge right now. The Death Grasp, very good to peel for the marksman. And Varus is getting out so much damage from range here. It's the Karma going to get taken down, and 2v4. It is going to be SG Proton top at AD with some heroics to push their opponents off the objective.
Play behind your tanks. Chai took the front line there. Base tanking 4 members. I mean, sure, they were low, but that's still a Mordekaiser. He walks at you and not much else. But he bought the space necessary for Yomi to stay alive, to use that chain of corruption to bring the extra space that they needed. And it bought just enough time for him to churn out the damage. And now they're going to get a Baron out of it unless some magic happens here. The bullet time was so close. But that Baron does wonders for turning this push around. Yeah, the waves are in, but they should be able to at least re-equalize some of the turrets here.
Yeah, good try from Domination there with the bullet time, but the secure was good. Reaver able to lock that one away. And yeah, honestly, just a really nice tag team there between Chai and Yomi. Even after the Varus got hooked, I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was going to be 2 more kills plus the objective, and Conduit were going to run away with this one. But Chai was able to, Varus able to flash away, and Chai was able to peel for him just enough. Buy some time for the Varus to get out those arrows.
Oh no, Nation's
able
in
to
trouble.
Make it happen. Now Chain of Corruption is going to land onto a Nation. He has the Crescent Guard to buy some time and his own flash to try and create some space. He's going to stay alive for now. Saw Reaver already committing the Cyclone, flashing forward for the knockups. Maybe going a little bit too deep, though. Oh, but the pullback from the Mordekaiser is massive, and the damage from the Varus is there once again. Finally, a team fight in favor of Subatomic Gaming. They're able to make it happen. It's a 3-for-1, and they've got Infernal Soul is next on the docket.
Nah, I think they're just going to keep pushing this. Messiah's taking a ton of damage here. Won't be able to stand up to Chai and Yomi for much longer. I don't think Alf and Chong can even think about taking this Drake, though. Not with Gav in the area.
Well, that is true that they don't have their jungler, but the rest of the team is going to move over now and push this Karma away, so they should be able to secure it relatively comfortably. And I do like this call. Yes, maybe you could have gotten some pressure pushing forward there, especially with the Baron that they do still have for actually another full minute. But it just feels like, you know, the much safer play and the guaranteed play is to just take the Infernal Soul there, and then you're still going to have a little bit of time, at least 1 minion wave to work with after coming back out onto the map here.
Yeah, they have 60 seconds here, but by the same token, you have to think a couple of objectives ahead. You get the Drake, but you would have gotten the Drake anyway. There's not a whole lot of danger with the way Death Timers were of just going ahead, knocking down that tier 2. It lets you push in vision so significantly deeper for this next Baron in 4 minutes, for the Elder in 5. As it is now, you're still a little bit superficial on those words. You can see Chong Solmo can't really think about walking too deep in without a whole contingent of members behind him. That means they're not going to have much knowledge on where Nation is when it comes to contesting those objectives.
Well, I think they are aware of where he is right now.
Well,
as Yomi, I think, even able to steal away a chicken there, potentially. And quite Brack, who was able to get the last hit on that one. But they seem pretty aware at the moment, as they are going to be able to lock away that tier 2 in the mid lane. And that is a lot of damage onto the Mordekaiser, but not enough damage to kill him. And he is still going to try and keep up the pressure. Wave clear from the way is pretty good. And it looks like he will just barely be able to keep that top tier 1 standing for now.
Yeah, barely though. That's maybe one unattended wave crashing before that goes down. And the gold balance now ever so slowly ticking in the way of SG Proton. Conduit held on to their gold lead for a goodly while here though, crewman.
They did, but it has now slipped through their fingers and gone back over to Proton to the tune of about 2K. And our next objective is going to be that second Baron in a couple minutes' time. So we'll see if that is going to be sort of an immediate priority as it does make its way onto the map, or if we're going to see SG Proton trying to play the map a little bit more, trying to keep on this pressure rather than resorting to setting up around the objective, as Messiah does have the rest of the team moving over. Chong Solmo should be able to stand beside his jungler and be pretty much fine. A little bit of a close call there on the hook, but not going to connect. And finally, this top tier 1 will be felled by the Mordekaiser.
Yeah, a little bit more gold in pocket. Has 3 fully completed items and is really on the way to raid boss status here. Wandering into team fights, just, yeah, you can hit me, but I don't care. I don't have to do damage to you when I have Yomi at 5, 1, and 3, also with 3 fully completed items firing from behind.
Yeah, and we have reached that point in the game, right, that you were kind of predicting for us in the draft, where the Karma can't really match into the Mordekaiser anymore. She can't really threaten him at all, and the side of Conduit have had to send Wei into that side lane to try to defend against the Mordekaiser's push, right, which is just not really the setup that you want to be going for with this composition that Conduit have.
No, Messiah does have the TP, and you don't mind TPing in as the mid laner. But that incredibly long-range poke, the ability to make Alfiotti and Yomi a little bit more wary as they try to step up to trade, that's invaluable here. As SG tries to keep the pressure on, and not having that, especially around this Baron as you prep for it, doesn't feel great.
Hook onto the Braum, but he's going to be able to put up the Unbreakable, and in goes Reaver for the Cyclone. Maybe not aware, though, at how many enemy players were in the area, and the Wukong is actually just going to get taken down. Look at that beautiful Braum ultimate, though, onto 4. It's not enough to save the jungler, though. And the Baron is spawning in just 20 seconds. Do the side of Conduit feel confident? Oh, they walked into the meat grinder. It's the seismic shove into the piercing arrow, and the health bars just went poof.
Nation is still alive, though, so without Soul Reaver on the map, there's no way for SG to take this Baron. That is a stay of execution that Conduit sorely needed to push out and try and get some vision, because look at that top quadrant. There's no red vision beyond the river. Whereas there's some good deep vision to try and keep an eye on that blast cone to make sure Nation can't steal anything.
Yeah, absolutely. We are just, Soul Reaver respawned now, back onto the Rift, and we are 1 minute out now on the Elder being up as well. So it does seem also we're going to have both of those objectives available at the exact same time. These are the parts of the game that can be very, very difficult to play out, right, from a macro perspective.
They have no vision on Baron. There is no red vision on Baron. This is completely blind.
Oh, dear. It's gone. It's just gone.
Yeah, they're far too
Conduit
late.
They didn't respect the possibility that their opponents could just go right to it. And SG Proton is going to say, no, we're not going to allow both of those objectives to be on the map at the same time. We're going to take the Baron, and then we're going to have complete control when this dragon does spawn. Look at that top wave as well. That is just dying to the turret right now. Nobody from Conduit is picking that up. This feels so desperate. It seems like they could have gone for another option. Let's see if it works, though. Panda Boat at the ready with the hook. Soul Reaver is going to get caught out again. Wukong is hesitant. He knows there could be something afoot here. He's not going to walk in by himself. I would love, Alls, for SG Proton to just walk down the mid lane with their parent buff. Oh, the hook is going to miss. And with their position revealed now, this fight has to be in favor of Subatomic Gaming. It's a difficult position. It's on the wrong side of the map as well for Conduit. Another hook going to miss. Thinking about moving in here to try and suss out exactly what's going on behind this Dragon Pit. It looks like they're just going to start up the objective, though, and Asian at the ready. I think he is still in range to connect the spear. Maybe not, though.
No.
No, he's not quite in range. He can't get over the wall to go for the 50-50, and Chai just has to stand here and zone away the enemy jungler, but I think he does have the flash. He's going to flash over the pit. Nation's going for the steal on the Elder. Who's going to get it? It's down to 1100 HP, and Jin Zhao's going to take it. It's the last hope for the side of Conduit, but they still can't seem to win out in the team fight. It's only Messiah and Dougie Fresh that are left alive to try and keep this Elder buff still available for the squad, and 5 men strong with the Baron still for the side of SG Proton. They can still go straight down this mid lane.
Yeah, you don't need to win the Elder because you can stop the ports. They're going to get the inhibitor here and potentially look to go ahead and take Nexus turrets. They have a full wave, a full contingent of minions, and that took a very long time for those 2 TPs to complete. There's already a Nexus turret dead. This is so dangerous for Conduit.
Oh, that's a lot of damage, though. And remember, the Elder buff's still on for both of these players. So they are able to hold at the last Nexus turret. Oh, Braum? Oh, able to complete that empowered recall. But still, I mean, that sequence, I think, has to favor SG Proton overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're just looking at these members getting stronger and stronger. I mean, Chai is full build, has 6 items, is basically untouchable, and you saw at the start of that fight effectively took domination out of it with a single pull obliterate combo, had him down to half health, and that's what allowed Soul Reaver to jump in so deep and knock him up, take him out with that Cyclone. It did give up the Baron or the Elder, but that's more than worth it if you can take away the one member of this Conduit squad who has real damage. The Jin Zhao has fallen way off. The Karma has fallen way off. If you don't have domination free firing from the backline, you're entirely reliant on a 1-in-3 Hui.
So Reaver on the flank now. Wukong with the ultimate available as well. Potential to come in here. It is dangerous still to fight into this Elder buff on the carries as well for the side of Conduit. So you have to make sure your target selection is there if you do go for this engage. But I think one other thing also that's worth mentioning is the fact that that last fight was such a big turnaround for the side of SG Proton compared to what we saw earlier in the game, right? Where they were split on that objective call, where they wanted Reaver to just stay on that dragon and try to finish him while the rest of the team, oh, that's a big bullet time. The Glacial Fisher comes out in response, though. Chung Soul, though, is there with the Unbreakable. They buy enough time, they take down the enemy carry, and now the dominoes start to fall in favor of SG, and Asian desperately gonna go in, but his team is already gone down. It's only Messiah left on this way. Might be able to get one execute with the Elder buff. Trong Somo barely able to stay alive there, and Chai's on the chase. He's ghosting forward, gonna get the flash out from the way, who managed to create a little bit more space with the fear, but I don't think it's gonna matter. In the end, the Weaver's Wall is going to come out, the Seismic Shove is going to be there, and the last member of Conduit is going to get taken down, and that's gonna do it for game number 1. It ended up being a pretty drawn-out affair, alls, but right around 38.5 minutes, SG Proton will take their first Nexus of the season.
Well, what a way to end game 1. Back and forth we went, crewmen. And, you know, I was not even sure towards the mid-game there, about the 20-minute mark, that SG really deserved that win. It felt like they had thrown away so much of their value and so much of their capacity to win this game with their questionable play and their questionable calls around the team fights that I almost felt like Conduit was going to take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely Conduit had some angles there. There's no doubt about that, but I think draft definitely ended up being a factor. You know, as we did get into the later portions of the game, the Karma and the Jin Zhao just fall off quite a bit. You know, and the Misfortune as well is not really able to carry. It's just kind of all about that ultimate, right? And you're playing into a Braum, which makes it extremely difficult. And you're also locking yourself in place, right, when you go for the bullet time. So you also have to worry about seismic shoves, about, you know, arrows, chains of corruption, all this stuff. It just makes the game really, really hard to play out for the Misfortune from that stage, from that position. I will say, I don't know if it's entirely fair to say that SG Proton didn't deserve the win. I mean, all you have to do to earn the win is be better than your opponents, right? And I
I'm
think
not
in
saying
the
they
end,
didn't
they
deserve the
were
win.
pretty decisively.
Yeah, I'm not saying they didn't deserve the win, crewman. I'm just saying it felt like they were really backing themselves into a corner.
Yeah, I think it could have been cleaner. That much I will say for Subatomic Gaming in this one. You know, there definitely were a couple of split calls. You know, there were a couple of dicey situations. But overall, I think the team play was more coordinated. I think that the the early support moves especially were pretty impressive for me at least. And you know, they definitely were pretty convincing down the stretch. You know, there were some angles for Conduit, but Conduit were never really in a position where it felt like it was their game, right? They were kind of desperately contesting around these objectives. You know, there were some fights that did end up going their way, but I think overall, this game one was pretty clearly in favor of SG Proton.
I would tend to agree, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Conduit can do to turn that momentum around in game 2.
Certainly. It will be really interesting to see. You know, they will, of course, have side selection as well. So that'll be interesting to see what decision they go for there, if there are going to be any adaptations in the draft, that sort of thing. But before we get to game 2, Alls, I want to get your game 1 POG. Who are you thinking over here for the side of SG Proton? You know, I think there is definitely a clear front runner for me, but we did have Varus doing the boom boom damage. What are your thoughts?
Nah, I think it's Chai. I think there's
Yeah.
there's
Chai.
pretty
The
easy
Mordekaiser.
there. Yeah, I think so. I think the power of the strong front line and the capacity to play for your carries was just so strong out of the top lane that despite the lack of pressure early, it was basically what won them the game towards the end.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that Chai did play out those team fights very, very well, doing a great job of frontlining for the team and zoning away, you know, the enemies in sort of those key situations. And there was that really big 2v4 fight to deny Conduit that Baron. You know, I don't remember exactly when that was. I think it was around like 23 or 24 minutes, somewhere around there. But personally, you know, my vote, I think, would have to go towards the Braum Chong Solmo for having those great roams in the early game and just having overall some really solid timings on the Unbreakable to deny the misfortune, right? To keep some teammates alive at some critical moments. So that's where my vote would go, but I think that's very fair to look towards the Mordekaiser as well. He had a very solid game overall, despite, as you say, the quiet laning phase. But with that, guys, I think we are now going to head into a short break while we prepare to jump into game number 2. Don't go anywhere. More BOL Season 11 opening day right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back for game number 2 between Conduit UMAT and SG Proton here, our week 1 streamed matchup. Conduit, after going down in game number 1, have elected to move over to the blue side for game 2, and we're already done with this first phase of bans. Bard, once again, going to be hitting the bench, as well as the Ashe and the Caitlyn, and then Maokai, Swain, Smolder. I believe those are the exact same bans as game 1, if I'm not mistaken.
It sure is, in a slightly different order though, because they gotta be special.
Oh. Okay, all right then. Very exciting. And now the Wukong is going to get stolen away. Picked on B1 once again, but this time, of course, for the other team.
Yeah, I mean, the Wukong was powerful. I'm not sure that the Wukong was B1 worthy.
I agree. I agree with that. But I think probably the main sort of thought process there is they're just trying to hide the rest of their composition, right?
Sure.
It's generally speaking, a common strategy to pick jungle on that B1 pick, right? Because then you can hide what you're going to do in the rest of the lanes. But that is not what SG Proton are going to go for. They're going to immediately lock away their bot duo in the Xayah Rakan.
Yeah, that's a very powerful duo. Does a very different job than the Braum, in that you can't protect quite as well, but similar amounts of disruption here, similar ability to get in. And Xayah, another fairly safe ADC that will be able to just be piloted from the background like Yomi did on the Varus.
Yes, certainly. Of course, the Varus was still available, so it's
True.
a little bit interesting that we didn't just go back to that option that was kind of working reasonably well. But we will see. It'll be interesting to see what we can get done with the Xayah instead. Maybe feeling like that's a better option into the Wukong, perhaps, as the Aphelios will be the response, and then the Talia will also get picked away. So it seems like the call for Conduit is just like, you guys had a pretty good draft in game 1. You mind if we take it?
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily love that. I understand why it's being done, because they are powerful picks, and they are picks that these Conduit players do play, albeit less often than are played by the SG Proton members. But at some point, especially in these kind of lower to mid elo matches, you have to play to your individual strengths, not to what's meta or what appears to be powerful.
Certainly. You know, I think you are pretty right about that playing to player strengths is critically important, even at high levels of play, right? I do think it's even more important down here, right, where we are for this particular matchup. But we will see how it goes as the Orianna has come out in response to the Talia. Maybe we can get some stats there in terms of that Orianna comfort for Alphate, who did have a pretty decent game number 1. Orianna has 7 games this season, only a 29% win rate though. So, you know, it's not a huge sample size, but still not the greatest stats that you would want to see.
Yeah, Orianna is one of those awkward champions where, while you can carry a game alone, it's definitely a lot better if you can play with your team on voice, because you want to be able to have that ball delivery system on lock. You want to be able to make sure your team can respond to the shockwaves very well. So it may look a little bit worse than it is here for Alpha, and I think as well the low sample size, as you mentioned, definitely does play a role, because that's 2 and 5. That's a knife's
it's not too crazy. Yeah. And does have a very good ball delivery system, as we were just hinting at already in the Rakan. Volibear going to be another pretty decent ball carrier there for the Orianna, as we did see a couple of frontline options removed by Conduit, the Jarvan and the Mundo, and then some support options going to be denied by the side of SG Proton in the Blitzcrank and the Thresh. And now let's see what is going to be the support option that does end up getting locked in. The Nautilus, still available. Pretty decent pairing with the Aphelios there.
Yeah, it's Blitzcrank, but a little bit better. Because Nautilus does a lot of things that Blitzcrank cannot with that depth charge. That's a lot of team-wide CC. In addition, I do feel like Nautilus has better general zone control and taking capabilities with the power of the W and the Riptide. But Udyr to round out the comp from Dougie Fresh into... Basically, Chai has an open book here.
Ooh, the Renekton. Not touched on this patch. I believe it was the previous patch, 14.4, where we saw some Renekton buffs. Has already made his way back into pro play, and here he is for our first match of the BOL Plat League, piloted by Chai into this Udyr. You have any expectations for this specific matchup, Ols?
Ooh, it's an awkward one, because Udyr is just obnoxiously powerful. The ability to slap you around in all those stances makes Udyr feel like one of those champions that can just kind of take over any matchup, no matter how bad it is. But Renekton with the shield break takes away a lot of Udyr's sustainability, because you can make that turtle stance feel very bad.
Very true.
So
Very, very true. Renekton does have that favorable interaction in the kit, and it does kind of feel like Dougie Fresh is kind of going for a similar philosophy to what he had in the previous game, right? Last game, obviously, it was the Karma, so certainly a very different type of champion than the Udyr, but similar in the sense that it's a neutralizer, right? You're not really playing the lane to win necessarily. You're just playing the lane to deny your opponent. So I don't know if that's like a matchup specific strategy here that's being employed by Conduit, or if you know, it's really more of just a player comfort kind of thing. But I do think there is some consistency there between those two picks and that sort of general strategy that they have for the top lane.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, I'm the weak side. Don't gank me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to win, but I'm also not going to lose, and I'm not going to leave my lane opponent with a big lead. The problem is, we saw that didn't work out. I do think it's a little bit different here, obviously, the Mordekaiser versus the Renekton. They're two very different champions that play differently as they head into that mid and late game. But it still feels a little bit awkward, right? So I want to see Gav take this Udyr, who they play quite well on. They have a 60% win rate over 30 games on this champion.
Nice.
I'd like to see them take a more active role in this game.
Yeah, certainly. I think that would be really great to see. You know, it's interesting as well for Chai because the Mordekaiser was available again as well. But deciding to go for something different, maybe just hoping to show some variety in the champion pool, keep their opponents guessing for the rest of the season. But you know, overall, also, what are your thoughts on these two drafts? Do you have a preference this time around for one side or the other?
Yeah, well, before that, I just want to say, you know, we talked about the NACL in Draft 1. These guys are basically playing Fearless Draft 2. Not a single champion repeated.
Yeah, very true. Despite having the opportunity, right? So I do find that very, very interesting for Proton, because I feel like the general kind of, or the more common thought process in competitive coordinated play like this is to show as little as possible, right? Is to just kind of, you know, keep those cards close to your chest and not reveal more than you have to. But it does feel like there's maybe a different philosophy for the side of SG Proton for this first week number 1. But back to my question before, Ols.
Ooh. In terms of these two teams,
yes,
I feel like Conduit has the slight edge here, but it is not a large edge.
Okay. Why are we giving them the edge?
I think they have a slightly better tank wall to give Aphelios and Talia the space they need to fight through. I think Volibear and Renekton and Rakan are too focused on the dive, on getting onto that backline. And there's not a whole lot of, we're just going to sit in the front and bat at each other in the way that the Mordekaiser was, where you just sit there and you mace people to death. But Renekton wants to slice and dice in. Volibear wants to take the ult and go in. Rakan wants to take the grand entrance, wants to quickness into the backline. And if that works, if they can get a beautiful Orianna Shockwave onto those backline members, they can tear Conduit apart. I just think that the window for doing so is incredibly small, and the technicality of execution is going to be incredibly high.
Oh, Alls, you and your tanks. But I do think you've made a couple of really great points there. I do think that the barrier or the difficulty of execution for the side of SG Proton is probably a little bit higher here. They do have a very strong team fighting composition, but it can be a little bit more difficult to get those crisp engages off. Whereas in a prolonged fight, I feel like maybe we would give it to the side of the Aphelios and the Talia in terms of like the extended amount of damage they can dish out. Not to say that Xayah and Orianna are slouches necessarily, but it does just kind of feel like that would likely be how the team fights do end up playing themselves out. I also do think that, given the amount of frontline and the amount of tanks and melee characters that we have in this game number 2, it is going to be especially important for us to keep our eyes on these carries, right? On the mid and the bot lane carries specifically, on how they are playing out these team fights. Like, are they able to get the damage out? Are they able to stay safe from the enemy engage? I think it's going to be critically important for both of these compositions that those players have a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts here, crewman, before we head to break?
No, I think it is time to do just that so we can get onto that rift for game number 2.
Alrighty. We'll be back, folks. Don't go anywhere.
All right, everybody, welcome onto the Rift once again for Game 2, second game of the season between SG Proton and Conduit UMAD. Conduit, of course, after taking a tough loss in game number 1, have swapped over to the blue side, and Subatomic Gaming now on the red with some pretty similar compositions between these two teams. We do have a little bit of a level 1 being attempted right now by Conduit. Pandaboat going to lead the charge on the Nautilus, but Chai is wise that this is going to be coming in. We'll spot them out with a well-placed ward, and nothing will come of it.
A well-placed ward, and importantly, good placement in where he was standing in that bush. If you stand up towards the side where that wall is, or in the center, you leave yourself very vulnerable to that gank angle. But by standing there in the bottom arm of that tri-bush, he was able to see along the wall and take away that potential cheesy level 1 hook from Pandaboat.
Absolutely. There's your game 1 POG, y'alls. Off to a great start here in game number 2. Not going to get caught out at level 1 or anything like that. It does appear that our junglers are going to be starting on opposite sides of the rift this time around. And Asian, once again, starting on that Raptor camp, something that he does seem to love to do, as Chung Somo is going to find a knock-up, a double knock-up at level 1, and that is a lot of feathers, and Domination is at 200 HP. Rakan is getting traded back on a little bit as the Ignite is committed by Pandaboat, but still an absolutely massive trade for the side of Subatomic Gaming in that bottom lane.
Here's the thing. Rakan will have healing at level 2. Pandaboat and Domination will not. He has Severum, so he'll have a little bit right now, but he doesn't have nearly as much.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, that's very, very consequential, right? We can see the potions already being utilized as well by both the Aphelios and the Nautilus to try and get a little bit of that health back. But it's especially bad, right? Because Xayah Rakan is not usually thought of as a strong laning duo. The fact that they're off to such a great start is definitely worrying if you are a Conduit fan.
Yeah, there is some silver lining here in that Nation is behind, so they can look for potentially a level 3 gank if Yomi and Chong Solmo aren't intelligent about reading the map. If they don't get pings from Reaver that something's going on here, and we do see down on the minimap that Wukong is looking to get behind here.
He's here. Oh, the flash, but it still connects onto the Xayah. The knockup is there, though. Beautiful peel from Chung Somo. I think that was a 3-man knockup from the grand entrance to deny the engage. 2
in a row on these beautiful grand entrances, and that will give Reaver just enough time to save the vertical jungle here. He's going to get both red buffs now. Perhaps.
Yes, there was some creative pathing there once again for an Asian. Just took his own Raptors into enemy blue, enemy Gromp into bot gank. But remember, had very creative pathing in the first game as well. Not enough to get them the win, and not really working out in the early minutes of this one either, as, oh man, this Nautilus is getting closed in on. The knockup once again from Chong. We'll be able to back away in time to not go down, and the first blood will go over to SG Proton, specifically the Volibear.
Yeah, that's a great pickup. Says, hey, you wanted to gank bot lane? This is how you actually gank bot lane. Pulls it off beautifully, gets the kill, and this relieves some good pressure from Yomi. Yeah, they are winning this lane, but without cleanse, without flash, you're in a dangerous position for a little bit. Pandaboat is still very scary. So having this little reprieve, having the chance to clear out this wave, get a reset, and start buying those first items is going to make him feel a whole lot safer.
Very true. And as we can see, that's a nice shove in the mid lane, but Messiah is running very low on the mana. Alphate is going to flash away to try and create some space between himself and the Nautilus as Pandaboat is once again on the roam. Alphate, though, has his jungler here. The flash forward, and Messiah is going to be going down for the second blood of this game. And then Chong, also a beautiful roam in towards the mid lane. The Sky Splitter will come down to prevent that continued aggression from the side of Conduit. And now the Nautilus is going to get taken down once again. 2 deaths already on Pandaboat. And SG Proton are off to the races.
It's not the entirety SG Proton. It's Reaver. Reaver has torn this game apart. Already 3-0-0, has boots and a sheen at 5 minutes. His clear is going to be lightning fast here, crewman.
Yeah, with those loose.
Oh, that was an awful pun. I'm sorry.
W back up off cooldown more. Yeah, he's feeling really good. That is a big old bear that we have in this game. Let's see
And
what he's going to decide to do with his massive lead.
yeah, looking towards these grubbies now, and last game we saw there was enough room for Reaver to take the Drake while Nation was taking the grubs. Are we going to see the same thing here? It's a little bit more awkward for Nation, doesn't have quite the same amount of power
Yeah.
around this bot side, but we'll have enough with Panda Boat roaming up, it looks like, to trade it evenly.
Yeah, it does look like at least that bot wave is crashing in towards the SG Proton duo, as Dougie Fresh has something to say about these Kevins being taken, but really, he probably should have just stayed silent, and he will be able to wander back into his own jungle and not give over any additional gold to the already very large bear.
Yeah.
But yeah, this trade will come through. By the way, Alls, after that little pop-up earlier, I did lose the game audio. I don't know if there's an easy way to fix that.
We'll get that sorted for you here real shortly.
For sure. Sounds good. Yes, that objective trade has finished up. And now we do see Reaver going into the enemy jungle to take away that Gromp. Same story on the other side of the map for N-Asia. And see if he wants to try and put a little bit more pressure once again onto this bottom lane as the wave is now pushing away from the Xayah Rakan. Nice knock up there from the Grand Entrance once again from Chong. The damage is crazy. The Blade Caller gets Panda Boat blinking down to 100 HP, and the Ignite's going to finish him off. Chong Solmo flashing forward there. Didn't actually need it in the end, but just for good measure, just to make sure that the Nautilus goes down. But now, N-Asian is here on the Wukong. Will be able to take down the Xayah at least. And Chong, I think, out of cooldown is going to get taken down as well. They do manage to give that one over to the Ophelio. So finally, Conduit managed to put themselves on the board here in game number 2, but this is still a pretty phenomenal start for SG.
Yeah, it's nice to see a little bit of turn there from Conduit, though. They may be down already 1,500 at 7 minutes, but they refuse to go out without a fight.
Yeah. And for SG, it is important, as you already mentioned for us earlier, to recognize the fact that pretty much all of this early gold is on a Volibear, who doesn't really scale super well. So, you know, that is a little bit of a silver lining also for the side of Conduit is, yes, this early game is going to be extremely difficult. And basically anywhere the Volibear is, you probably shouldn't be. But eventually we will get to a point where that lead in the jungle is not really going to be as consequential.
But the sign of a great jungler, crewman, is when you can get these early individual leads like this 1,000 gold lead at 8 minutes, and use it to accelerate your laners. When you can take this
Absolutely.
and now chain gank mid and top, or mid and bot, and get your carries into a position where they can take over when you start to fall off, that's when you become a truly spectacular jungler. And that's what we need to see Reaver doing if SG wants to take advantage of this absolutely outstanding early game.
Yeah, does bring us back, as you say, to the question of what Reaver is going to do with the lead that he has managed to find for himself. Of course, was on the Wukong in the previous game. Main job was just set up in those later game team fights. This time around, he's not going to have as big of an impact in those team fights later on. Needs to make sure he has his impact now in the early game when the Volibear is at his strongest. And now, as we can see, level 6 acquired for Reaver in the bottom lane. See if we can get our camera down there. They're pushing off Aphelios from the turret right now. The threat of the Stormbringer is very, very high. They did nerf it in the early levels of that ultimate for the Volibear. Oh, the flash forward for Chai. He's going to commit the Ignite, and he just absolutely slices and dices Dougie into little tiny pieces. That is going to be the first kill of the game for the Renekton, who has managed to build himself up a pretty reasonable lead in that top lane.
Well, when you have laners like that, you really don't need to spread your wealth around, I suppose. Great job by Chai, just knowing his numbers.
Chai has his own investments. He's got a pretty solid portfolio up there, you know, just individually. So he doesn't really need to rely on Sol Reaver, you know, distributing those options necessarily. He's going to be doing just fine on his lonesome. We do have our next set of objectives spawning in about a minute. The Kevins are going to come up first. About 15 seconds on those. And we do have N-Asian in the area, hoping to once again trade evenly for those Void Grubs.
Yeah, they
but
do
also
have...
Soul Reaver moving over.
They do have the numerical advantage here, and they're going to take at least one. They need two to deny the small grubs, so will they be able to get it? Looks like yes, because Messiah is going to be in trouble.
Wants the Talia instead. Couldn't get the flash out from Messiah. The seismic shove, pretty decent, but the shockwave pulls the Talia back into dangerous territory, and Chong is there with the knockup, because of course he is. He's always there with the knockup, and now Soul Reaver is moving forward, going to find another stun onto only N-Nation's clone, which will be good news for the Wukong. And he did manage to secure those two grubs, the critical number that you were just highlighting for us all. So that is good news for Conduit. Another knock-up. And Asian pretty healthy, and no shockwave for the Orianna means he will be just fine.
Yeah, not nearly enough damage to tear through the Wukong at this point in time. Stone Skin takes a lot of the power out of those trades before the Orianna has her fully completed items. But great pick there onto Messiah. I'd say that might be, depending on how you look at it, well worth the slightly declined pushing power. Is Shy looking for Dougie Fresh?
Ominous. Oh, no flash. I think if the Renekton had flash there, that's another dead Udyr, but thankfully used it for the last play.
Still, though, gonna be at least a plate, gonna have tons of pushing power, gonna be able to clear this wave out real fast and crash another one. Just continuing to expand the lead over this Udyr. You said in draft that this was one of those lanes where Dougie Fresh isn't necessarily trying to win so much as just go even. I think that ship has sunk pretty badly here, crewman.
Yeah, it's not looking very even to me. That is for sure. As N-Nation and Messiah waiting behind the Dragon Pit here. Clearly, they want to go for some kind of contest. Pandaboat is providing some vision in the form of a human Nautilus-shaped ward. There's another one that's a ward-shaped ward that is going to go over the wall. Oh my god, look at it. This turret is almost... It's 12 minutes in, guys. And Chai's almost taking this entire top lane turret by himself. As that's a dredge line that will connect onto Trunks Olmo, but he's Rakan. He has the double knockup. The Dragon is going to go over to Proton, and Reaver is just going to kind of run at them menacingly to push the opponents away. So Proton, they lose nobody. They get the objective, and Conduit just wasted a whole bunch of time staring at their opponents take a Dragon.
That was really, really unfortunate there. I was watching the Volibear. He didn't even get over the Weaver's Wall. He just stood at the edge of it and smited over it. And that was enough to take the Drake. That's so depressing if you're Messiah, knowing that you spent all that effort trying to make it work and got negative value.
The storm is being brought down onto this Aphelios' head. The Moonlight Vigil is soaked up by the very large bear, and Domination just had no chance.
Beautiful kill, handed over to Yomi. Volibear started with 4 kills, has not picked up 1 since, but still remaining valuable. Again, distributing the wealth very well.
Absolutely. As you were calling for right earlier on, Soul Reaver very active on this map, getting a lot done. And the lead is growing for Subatomic Gaming. They're up now about 5k gold. Absolutely massive lead this early on.
Yeah, I want to check here. How much of that is just from turret plates in the top side? Quite a bit. About 2,000 gold lead. And is actually going to take first turret here before Dougie Fresh can get back around the wall. That's going to make it worse.
5 plates for the Renekton. You see that plus 575 over his head there.
At that point,
a very rich crocodile and bear.
As a top laner, you just pack it in. You say no thanks. I'm going next. There's nothing I can do. I'm a full item behind.
And as well, Dougie Fresh going for a AP, the Liandry's first. I have to question that decision here. When you've lost lane this hard, I feel like your only chance of providing value in this game is just be a frontline, right? Be as tanky as possible, buy as much time as possible for your carries. That doesn't seem to be the call, as Depth Charge is going to come out onto the Orianna. Decent seismic shove, but only onto the Rakan. And Reaver is here means that the side of Conduit can't really opt in for this fight. The Volibear is still just too dangerous. He's got his first item done already in the form of that Iceborne Gauntlet, and you just can't fight him.
No, however, that little spar was enough time for Nation and Dougie Fresh to pick up the Rift Herald. The turrets are all still very healthy, so they're not going to break anything, but trying to get one of those bricks a little bit more unsteady could at least let you do something here in terms of trying to break away from the stranglehold that SG has right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is something, right? And Shelly, I believe that the side of Conduit secured the Rift out in the previous game as well. I'm not 100%
You
sure
are
about
correct.
that. They did get, I think, a little bit of value. They got a charge at least from Shelly in the previous game. Somebody did. But I mean, I don't know if it was really that impactful.
I believe that was the charge that led to the bad dragon fight from SG Proton,
Ah,
the one
yeah,
where they stood in
that's
the
right.
misfortunal. So it was indirectly valuable.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, I suppose so. In a manner of speaking, anyway, as the Renekton now, as we can see, is looking for more turrets to destroy. He's pushed up to that tier 2 now. And, you know, it's still pretty relatively healthy at the moment, but the Renekton is eyeing it hungrily.
Yeah, and has Soul Reaver in pocket, just free to roam around that blue quadrant there. And when you have the extra numbers, it becomes so dangerous for Dougie Fresh to even think about pushing up. Has finally completed that Leandries, but I don't know, that doesn't feel like the right combat stats. As you were saying earlier, it just feels like Udyr is so far behind that even if you'd already committed to the Haunting Guys, you have to pull out and swap to just pure tank.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been what I would have liked to see, but, you know, maybe we will get some Leandri's value. There are the Renekton and the Volibear on the other side, right, that you are theoretically going to be getting a lot of, you know, circles on in the team fight. So, you know, maybe there'll be some value there if the Udyr does manage to somehow stay alive, but it just does feel very, very difficult to actually make that happen.
Yeah,
As
looking.
our next dragon is coming up in about 15 seconds here. It's going to be a Mountain Soul this time around. Also, how do we feel about Mountain Soul?
Well, that shores up a lot of the weaknesses in SG's draft here. Because the big problem I
Oh,
had with it, remember, is Nation is a little caught out, forced to use that Cyclone defensively.
yeah.
The big issue
Big.
is they don't have tanks to stay with the backline. But if the backline has their own resistances and their own shields, they don't need the tanks.
Fair enough. Yeah. And, you know, that is certainly going to be a difficult situation if Conduit do find themselves in it, as an Asian's just being zoned away right now. Chong Solmo is just being kind of annoying on the recon, something that champion is very, very good at. Dougie is desperately trying to hit this turret in the top lane, as the rotation did come through from Chai to be a little bit closer to this bot side river in case the team did need him. Didn't really end up being the case, as this dragon is easily going to be secured. Now the Renekton is going to make his way back up towards the top lane in time to defend the tier 1 from going down. Flash forward for Reaver. He's going to get the start of the domination, forces the flash out from the Aphelios, and the knockup is there from Panda, but to try and buy a little bit of time. The Midnight Vigil is pretty good. Trunks Solmo going down pretty low. Not quite enough to finish off the Rakan, though, but now Soul Reaver in the front line trying to buy some time to get the bot lane out to safety and going back in as the Rakan. I don't know about that one. And Domination's going to get another kill. Now Yomi does still have the Feather Storm, will have to use it. Teleport committed now from the Renekton as well. That's a lot of tools down for the side of SG, and they do lose out in the fight, 2-0.
Yeah, and that
And
was
Conduit finds some gold.
that was an odd numbered fight in favor of SG at the start there. But good job by Domination staying alive long enough for the rest of the team to get there with that flash, with that ghost, getting out of the wombo combo of Chong Solmo and Reaver. That's a big shutdown as well, going over to Messiah. 700 gold
Yeah,
now in the pockets out of the Volibear. It's not great.
absolutely. And I do feel like, as you were just kind of saying, Oz, I think that initial trade where Volibear goes in, flashes forward onto the Aphelios, gets the Aphelios flash, that's good, right? That's worthwhile. But then when you continue kind of moving forward, as the fight kind of breaks apart and more members from the enemy team manage to close in, that's kind of, I think, where it all fell apart for the side of SG in that fight.
Yeah, it kind of brings to mind what we saw with the problematic fights in Game 1, where they weren't all on the same page, where their team fight callouts just weren't coherent, and they were finding themselves dragged in 5, 6, 7 different directions trying to win a single fight.
Yeah.
You can't have that when you're playing 5v5 team games like League of Legends.
Very true. Very, very true. As Baron does arrive, as we can see, into this topside river. And I think that is a good thing to highlight, right? The fact that Conduit did have some really solid team fighting in the mid game, or some poor team fighting from their opponents, depending on how you want to look at it,
Yeah, little
to
column
get
A, little
themselves in
column
a
B.
pretty decent position. Yeah, absolutely. But they were in a pretty decent position, right? And actually, in that previous game, they didn't really ever have complete control, but they definitely had some angles. So it'll be interesting to see, if this pattern continues for the side
Oh,
of
Chong Solmo.
SG, what yeah, he is going to get shoved a little bit here. Rakan going down quite low and no W available. Messiah is just going to throw another rock. And then Rakan is going to go down once again.
That was just disrespectful, crewman. You can't be
Yeah.
that deep into someone who can stop your way of getting out.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the power of the Talia, right? So good into champions like Rakan that rely so much on their mobility, right? And it was, I think, as you say, a bad call from Chong to go in that deep when there's not really anybody there behind him to follow up. And also just a really nice punish from Messiah.
Yeah, absolutely. Extra golden pocket gets you closer to that Leandry's, inching towards 2 items, and we saw how good a Fed Talia can be last game as Alf was able to churn out damage in support of Yomi. So will be interesting to see if Messiah can find that same level of success.
Certainly. And as we highlighted from the draft, right, the carries here for both sides are going to be critically important in these team fights to actually get the damage done on these beefy frontliners. So that is very big as well. The fact that Messiah did get that extra kill, does now have that Leandry's completed. 2 items for the Talia, as well as the Zaya on the Quick Blade Kraken Slayer combo.
Yeah, as we're looking at these team fights with the gold just 3,000 apart, how are you feeling? Do you feel like Conduit can continue to find these fights where they win? Or is it necessary for them to find mistakes and rely on SG not playing to their full potential?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I do think that once Aphelios also has 2 items, once he has that Infinity Edge ready to go, I think you can set up for a 5v5 on a relatively even footing. That should, I think, be winnable for Conduit in theory. The key question is, are you able to reach those item breakpoints at the same time, right? Because there is still a meaningful advantage for SG Proton in this game in terms of gold. They're still up about 3k, and they have that extra dragon lead as well. So I think they are still favored. But if we are in an honest, straight-up 5v5, I definitely don't think Conduit are out of this one just yet. As Strong Solmo and Reaver on a little bit of a flank there, looking for the Aphelios. They do manage to get on top of Domination, but he does have his flash off cooldown once again. He manages to get out of dodge, and he counterattacks with the Midnight Vigil and absolutely shreds the engage. They're not able to take down the Aphelios. The carries were not in range to DPS the Aphelios, and Volibear and Rakan have just thrown this whole game away.
Man, crewman, I hate that engage for SG here. You need damage. You have a Volibear and Rakan. This is not a Volibear that's building damage. This is an Iceborne Gauntlet Deadman's Volibear. He just stuns. You need Yomi or Alpha in there, but Shy's in trouble.
Forwards. We're going to get back to that in just a second as the side of SG are going for the 3v5 team fight. It's out only the carries left now, but they do have the damage that they need. Yomi, though, is going down pretty low. Messiah gets the shove, and that's going to do it. That's going to complete the ace, as that was so much hubris from SG to think that they could walk in there and fight the 3v5 without jungle or support. You didn't even have your jungle there. You need to completely wipe all 5 members to even think about getting that dragon. What were they doing, alls?
You know, can you imagine what that fight would have been like if you had slapped that first engage onto that instead? Because the damage out of Alpha and Yomi was so close. They just needed a second more to keep firing.
Yeah.
But they didn't have it because they didn't have any disengage. They didn't have any disruption. I think it was a little bit of desperation. It was a little bit of, oh shit, we're kind of letting this game fall out of our hands. And you need to be aware of, yeah, the game is slipping, but you can sit back and reposition. You can let your 5 members spawn. It's only a second Drake. It's not the end of the world. And they just lost sight of their position in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you remember Chai and Yomi did have that valiant 2v4 in the previous game. Maybe just, I mean, clearly they thought that they were going to be able to do that again, but And it looked kind of close for a second because the Orianna and the Xayah did have a good amount of damage, but it just wasn't enough. And it was so risky, so dangerous to go for that play. You know the odds are not in your favor, and now you've given the driver's seat over to Conduit. They now are the ones in control. They've tied up the dragons. They've pulled slightly ahead in gold, and so much map control. Look at all this vision around the Baron they were able to pick up off the back end of that play as well.
Yeah, and starting to hit major item breakpoints. Dougie was so far behind with that early Leandries, but now has the Frozen Heart. Chai is not going to be able to cut through him as well anymore. Messiah has the Seraphs. That's a whole lot of survivability here. And Domination, sitting on that fully completed Infinity Edge, is now going to be able, with that Midnight Vigil, to shred through everybody. Yeah. You have started hitting that kind of losing low point, and I don't know that they're going to get any more peaks, as Chong is once again way out of position.
Chong, where you going? Just going to get shoved, taken down once again, and Asian picks up number 3. Oh, man. Oh, his SG are just falling apart before our eyes.
Yeah, they really want a game 3 here. Want this first week stream to be a banger, I suppose, but boy, you didn't have to throw this hard.
Chai is still...
He's losing.
Wanting to fight the Udyr, but yeah, I mean, as you were teasing... Oh, no, another kill. Alphate's going to try to flash away. Looks like he will be able to survive. Yomi going to move over, going to get a little bit of a route onto an Asian. Now it's another tool gone. Orianna flash, that is big. And as, back to this top lane matchup, as you were just teasing for us, the Udyr doesn't really take damage from the Renekton anymore. Not very much, anyway.
No, I mean, Chai still has the push because Renekton shreds waves with that Kol'Vamik, but he's not going to be able to do much more than that. Phoenix Dance is going to be enough for Dougie Fresh to just clear right outside of that turret, and it's basically just a deadlock here. Means that you've got to do something with the other 4 members, but Alf has no safety with that Seraphs, has no flash, has no TP. The 3-man doesn't have the capacity to win anymore. They just don't have the damage to pick off anybody unless they can find a real awkward engage onto Domination alone, rotating through this jungle. So they're stuck in a holding pattern. They have to now wait for Conduit to direct the next portion of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty even one that we have on our hands now, but as you were just saying, Conduit now with the momentum. They find themselves in a position to dictate how the game goes from here. They still need to win a couple of decisive team fights to really put the screws in, but they are in a much better position than they were just a few short minutes ago.
I am going to derail the conversation here for a quick little aside. My secondary role is support. I was a support player for about 5 seasons. Nothing rattles me more than at 28 minutes having my ADC just barely hitting double-digit vision score.
Ooh. That is a little bit of a mark against Domination, then, is kind of where you're going with this.
Yeah, please use your trinkets, place control words. They are cheap, they save lives.
Well, he has one in inventory right now. Let's see where he decides to put it. As the 3rd Mountain Dragon is now going to be arriving onto the Rift in just 15 short seconds, and will be Mountain Soul Point for somebody. Whoever manages to secure that one as teleport from Messiah towards that mid lane tier 1. You're going to get some control over the mid lane wave in advance of this potential objective fight breaking out. Definitely, as we can see, Conduit with control over the South River for now. And SG trying to force their way in. But this Dragon's just getting shredded. I think it's just gone. The Weaver's Well comes out to buy some more time. The objective is gone. And Conduit can go wherever they'd like from here. Chong's going to try and go for a little bit of an engage, knock up only onto the Wukong. And yeah, I mean, if Conduit want the fight, they can have it. But it looks like they're happy just getting the objective and looking to just kind of back away. We're going to go for a stun onto the Nautilus here. Ghosting is Domination. Going to toss out that Moonlight Vigil. Does a whole bunch of damage. Not enough to kill anybody off, though.
Man, crewman, that just such an unnecessary map read from SG, and now they're losing pressure on the Baron as well, thanks to all that damage they've taken. But you saw on the minimap how late Yomi and Chai reset to be there for that Drake fight. They weren't even past blue buff when the dragon died.
It was slow. Yeah, you're right. And now Chai's getting engaged on the dredge line, connects. The depth charge forces out the Featherstorm. The Renekton's going to get absolutely shredded. It's a good blade caller. It's a decent amount of damage back, but the team fight is already looking so good for Conduit. They managed to shred through the front lane. Flashing, looking for the seismic shove. Maybe a step too far forward for Messiah. Going to get punished for that when the shutdown goes over. No Featherstorm, though. I think Domination wins the 1v1 battle between the AD carries at this point. Dougie Fresh looking to chase down the Orianna. Not quite going to be able to get that kill either, but Yomi is in a pretty difficult position here. Ooh, that dredge line is not going to connect. Pretty surprising, honestly, that one did not land for Panda Boat, but it looks like the Xayah is going to be able to get back to the base. This Baron, I think, will almost certainly be going over.
Yeah, there's no way to possibly contest this with all 4 members here, super healthy. There's no jungler on the map even until the Baron spawns. Again, just SG falling apart at the seams. It feels like they've completely lost their direction here. They don't quite know how to play this game.
Yeah, they do look like they're reeling, right? Like they're kind of stunned by the massive turn that this game has taken. They're clearly the shot calling, the in-game leadership has kind of fallen apart here. And they now very much find themselves on the back foot, down to about 3K, the lead that they had before. We now see on the other side as Conduit are in a great position to get us towards that game 3.
And the question becomes, this starts to have an effect on your entire 3-game mental. Because SG was riding the high of a fairly dominant ending to game 1, and they carried that momentum into the second game with Soul Reaver absolutely popping off. But now they're cratered. Now they're feeling uncertain. They're not having good team fights. I mean, Chong is spent more time dead than alive, it feels like, with the most deaths on the map. It's going to take...
it's such a great start right in the laning phase, but absolutely, Rakan has been caught out quite a bit down the stretch as Chai is losing this. Does have the Dominus, is going to continue slicing and dicing forward, even going to take a turret shot there, and not really going to get anything done for his troubles. Feels like the Renekton's time in this game, in this side lane, is pretty much over. Soul Reaver moving forward once again. You're going to go for the Stormbringer, and that is going to be the punishment in the top lane onto the Renekton, but in the mid lane, that means that SG have a numbers favored fight, and they are going to find a couple of big picks, a shutdown on the Wukong and the Aphelios. Sign of life for this roster. Dredgeline connects, though, onto the Volibear, and he already used the ultimate. He's going to get absolutely popped by the Taliyah. Featherstorm comes out, and Yomi forced to flash away. We'll be able to... Oh, that Dredgeline again, so close. Weaver's Wall comes out. Nice Blade Caller to deny the follow-up. Ends up being a 2 for 2, Alls.
Yeah, 2 for 2, but look at the timers. 30 seconds on Reaver and Chai. The health bar very low for Yomi. This should be enough for Conduit to pick up a good chunk of this inhibitor turret's health bar and start prepping very strongly for this Soul Dragon here, spawning in just 45 seconds. So leaves SG once again in a very awkward position. They had a win and they just couldn't finish it all the way through.
And we did talk about how good Mountain Soul would be for the side of SG Proton, right? But it's obviously fantastic for the side of Conduit as well. Obviously Udyr and Nautilus are going to get a ton of value out of that just from being more tanky. But the Wukong as well synergizes with the Mountain Soul so exceptionally well with his passive, multiplying that armor to an insane degree. And then, of course, Taliyah just loves rocks, so that just kind of works.
I think that one's maybe your weakest connection there, but Chong Solmo might be better again.
As Chong Solmo, barely gonna get away from that dredge line. We'll avoid the seismic shove as well as Dougie pushes him out of this river. Vision gonna get cleared away, and the dragon gonna get started up. We can see Soul Reaver in the area, desperately wanting to force his way in towards this Dragon Pit somehow, but Panda Boat doing a beautiful job of zoning away the enemy jungler, and he just never even had a chance to get close. The Dragon will be secured, the Mountain Soul will be secured. Chai did manage to get into the pit, but only finds his own demise as Chong Solmo tried to follow up, but is going to get hit by the shove this time around. There's the Wombo combo, and Alls, we're going to game number 3. Soul Reaver desperately trying to get at least one kill onto the support, but he cannot do it. That is the Soul plus the clean ace, and it's going to be Conduit, you mad, walking down mid lane.
Hey, full props to Panda Boat there in that fight, all alone on the top side, zoning away both Reaver and Yomi, and surviving. That's something else. Made it so easy for Nation to secure that soul, and without the numbers in the rest of the fight, there was really nothing that SG could do to salvage that, and as you said, we're now headed to that game 3.
It was not looking good for Conduit in the early minutes of this one, but honestly, a couple of really big throws coming out from SG Proton. Jungle and support overcommitting, looking for the dive onto these enemy carries when the rest of the team just simply was not in position to follow up. Ended up giving over a bunch of gold. Aphelios and Talia got online, and Conduit just took control over that map and did not give it up.
Yeah, as we look at the stats here, I mean, full props to the entirety of this Conduit squad for having faith in themselves, right? Like, that's a rough early game, and if you're a lot of teams, you start to lose hope, you start to get worried that, hey, we're just going to keep falling down, but they fought through, they let Reaver run out of real estate in terms of the potential of that Volibear to scale up and get scary, and a couple of good fights for domination. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, the Aphelios play was quite nice. You know, he was obviously the target of a lot of those over-aggressive moves from the side of Subatomic Gaming, and was able to stay alive, right, and get out so much damage in the process. So definitely, I think props there. Dougie Fresh, you know, rough laning phase. Same for Panda Boat, honestly, but they both managed to hang on. And once that game did end up turning around, they definitely did a great job of frontlining for the team. Nation, once again, with that creative early game pathing. I don't know, Walls. What are you thinking for game 2 POG here for the side of Conduit?
I think I give it to Panda. I think the hooks and the zoning were valuable enough in those fights that he gets the nod from me. How about you?
I like it. I mean, Messiah was on top of the damage charts. I don't know if the game was really about him, though. You know, the Weaver's Walls, honestly, maybe a little bit underwhelming. I think I'm going to go ahead and align with you all. I liked the Panda Boat vote here. Definitely a lot of dredge lines landing in this one, and some at some really critical moments. So I think that's a really good vote. Definitely played the team fights out well. Depth charge on the right target. You know, it was just really solid play, I think, from the Nautilus that sort of solidified that advantage that Conduit did find themselves with. Do you have any other final thoughts here on Game 2, Walls, or anything you wanted to tease before we get into that Game 3 draft?
Nah, I think it's time for us to go ahead. Let's not let these players wait any longer, and I think Twitch chat will probably want to see this last game as well before it gets too late in the night. We're going to take a short break here as they get into the third game lobby, but we'll be right back with the end of Week 1 here in BOL Plat.
Charged up, my fuse igniting a sight you wanna see. Pointing to the sky, gonna make the earth shake, 'cause you can't contain me. Voltage burst through the black of my eyes, put my finger on the trigger and I'll shock you, baby. Against the odds, until the dawn, the darkness falls, and I lose control. I feel it in my bones. spot to lead us through the shadows. But can I fight the way before me? It's coursing through my soul, a road to guide us through the sorrow. Can I calm this storm inside me? I feel it in my bones, a spot to lead us through the shadows. Can I fight the way before me? It's coursing through my soul, a road to guide us through the sorrow. Can I calm this storm inside me? This storm inside me.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the deciding game number 3, the game 3 that we thought we weren't going to get. But here we are into the draft, and Subatomic Gaming Proton are back now on the blue side. After losing out in game 2, they had the option, and they are going back to blue, where they managed to get that win in game number 1. Bands looking pretty similar alls. Don't know if too much is going to change there. Will it be B1 Wukong for the 3rd game in a row?
I mean, why not? It's the lucky charm, right? They've won both times.
That's true.
I
Wukong 2-0 tonight.
still not convinced the Wukong has been the reason so much as it's just not been bad, but sure, take it. Why not?
Let's see. Moment of truth. Is this
No.
what Soul Reaver
They're
is going
gonna
to
put
elect to go
Alf
to?
back on
Talia
the Talia.
first this time around. And that does mean that the Wukong is going to go over. It's very interesting, because I do believe that the Talia is also 2-0 tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
You would be correct. And they're going to go with the Orianna instead. So this is a mirror of the matchup that we saw just last game. And that didn't go super well for Alf. So this could be interesting for Messiah here.
Yeah, seems like almost like an ego choice, right? Like, yeah, I beat you on the Talia side of this matchup, but I can actually win either side. I'm going to pick the Orianna into the Talia now and show you how it's done. That kind of feels like what we're seeing here, as the Wukong, of course, going to get locked away for Conduit as well. And now Proton going to opt in for the Poppy Varus. So they are leaving their support pick for this second phase. Wonder what Conduit are going to elect to ban away. Are they worried about the Rakan, or just more of these hook champions, perhaps? As, yeah, I think we are very happy to see Dominations of Felios once again, after a very solid performance on that in the previous game.
I don't know how I feel about this Poppy, to be quite honest with you. Like, yeah, she's a good duelist among junglers, and the zone control of that steadfast presence is super valuable. But picking it this early means that Conduit, who hasn't picked a ton of dash champions outside of the Wukong in their previous games either, is perfectly free to just say, alright, we won't pick any dash champions. And then the Poppy is significantly weakened in terms of the value that she brings, in my opinion at least. I feel like there are better things that could have been picked up here, even just from among Reaver's pool.
Well, I do agree. I do definitely agree. The Poppy does feel substantially weaker when she's not playing into one of those compositions that has a lot of dashes. Does feel like you're losing out there on quite a bit of the kit. But she also can still provide value in the sense of like the ultimate, right, around objective fights. If you're able to successfully eject the enemy jungler, then you can guarantee those secures. And in a match that has been as chaotic as this one, I think there is definitely some potential there. As we are through the second ban phase, these bans looking very familiar as well. Chai's Mordekaiser is going to get banned away, as well as a couple of hook supports actually banned away by SG, despite the fact that they also still need a support lock-in, as the Amelia will come in on R4 to get paired up alongside the Aphelios.
Big change of tempo here from Panda Boat. No hook champions. That feels a little bit rough. Because the hook champions were, for the most part, working out decently well. The Blitzcrank missed a couple of really meaningful ones, but that Nautilus, so good. Good enough that we both agreed that it was player of the game.
Yeah.
Now on the Milio, that feels like a big step back in terms of raw playmaking power, raw ability to shape these fights.
Very true. Very true. You know, I do think it is a strong pairing alongside the Aphelios. But it'll be interesting to see, right, if Panda Boat is going to be able to have that same kind of impact on the game as Tahm Kench and Karma going to round out the composition for SG. So presumably that is going to be Karma support, Tahm Kench top lane, or yeah, well, I guess we don't really know. They could go in either position, both of those champs. So we'll see.
I think that could very well be a Karma top. It is in Chai's wheelhouse, seeing a 5.2 KDA and unblemished record over 4 games, which, you know, isn't a ton. But into the Ornn here, that TK almost feels better.
It's an interesting choice, right? I mean, the Karma, you can obviously harass the Ornn early, kind of similar to what we saw in game 1, right? When it was Karma versus Chai's Mordekaiser up there. But I think the Tahm Kench is going to have a little bit more staying power, you know, later on into the game, if that is going to be the top lane option for SG. Still definitely not entirely clear to us, you know, what is going to end up happening there. But you feel pretty confident in the fact also that you would prefer to see the Tahm Kench going into the top lane? Is that what you were saying?
I think so, yes. I think I'd be much happier to see the... just going ahead and saying, sure, we'll play the poke game down bot. Let Varus Karma just slowly push out Aphelios Milio, because outside of that sniper, Aphelios doesn't have as much poke as Varus does. He'll burn through that very quickly in the early game. That'll give plenty of time for Varus and Karma to build an advantage. While Tahm Kench has much the same scaling curve as Ornn, we'll be able to hit that level 6 and start doing a ton of damage in those extended trades, working through that big health bar with the help of the percent max health damage. So yeah, I feel like TK is the better matchup in the top side and fits a whole lot better with Chai's playstyle.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I actually ran into a Tahm Kench and a top Kench in solo queue the other day, also, and he went for this very interesting AP build. It was really nasty. He ended up dropping like 20 kills. I got completely obliterated by this guy.
Just
so
the tongue lash
I don't know if
special?
that's necessarily what we're going to be seeing here. I'm not gonna, you know, promise anybody magic catfish, but it's a build that's floating around out there. We'll see. We shall definitely see. I think that is a great point as well, where, you know, Varus isn't really... Typically, you want to pick Tahm Kench in the support position when you have, like, a critically important hyper carry AD that you need to protect, right, with the Devour. Varus isn't really that. I mean, kind of if you go the on-hit build, you know, maybe you could argue that he is, but I think it's generally considered to not quite be as strong as the lethality option. I think Varus Karma is set up as sort of a poke lane. I think would look really, really nice. So I do think I'm aligned with you there. That's probably would be my preference to see that as well. But let's go ahead and zoom out, Alls. Big picture. How are we feeling about these Game 3 drafts?
I feel a little bit more confident in Conduit here, frankly. I know. You're gonna say, it's Alls in his tanks again, but it's Ornn. It's the Ornhorn.
It is Ornn.
It's the power of that ram coming down and disrupting Talia and Varus long enough for the ball delivery system to get on top of them. That's just such a powerful engage that requires so much preparation and so much vision from SG Proton constantly all across the map to make sure that it can't happen. When you have to check every corner, you can only check so long before you miss one. So I feel like as long as Conduit can keep this game even, it feels like an inevitability for them.
Yeah, it does definitely feel like Conduit kind of have everything with this draft, right? They have great front line, they've got great scaling, they've got really strong damage carries, they have the Melio to buff up the Aphelios, and they even have Engage with the Wukong as well as the Ornhorn, as you mentioned. And that does kind of feel like the key difference to me, also between these two compositions, because SG Proton also have pretty solid front line and reasonably strong scaling carries, right, in the Talia and the Varus, as well as the Karma. You know, if she's building Enchanter, then she can buff those guys up as well. But they don't really have any Engage to speak of. Like, you can toss out a Chain of Corruption, maybe. You know, if Poppy gets somebody into a wall somehow, you know, that could potentially look pretty good. We saw Cuz earlier this season on the Poppy get that 3-man knock-up. That was pretty epic. But I don't know if that's the most reliable in terms of what you could have in regards to Engage. So I think I'm gonna agree with you there as well. It does feel like Conduit just have the slightly more well-rounded composition, and now, of course, they are also the ones with momentum after getting that win in game number 2. But I think that just about covers it for the draft, guys. There's only one thing left to do, and that's to get onto Summoner's Rift to see who is going to emerge victorious in their first match of Season 11. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this. Back onto Summoner's Rift we go for the third and final time tonight. SG Proton once again on the blue side after throwing away a pretty substantial lead in that game number 2. And Conduit, fresh off the win. Conduit, you mad, over here on the red side for this deciding third game. Also, there's a couple of runes and summoner spells that I actually find a little bit interesting here. Is there anything
Alright.
jumping out at you?
Well, as I'm looking through, a little bit surprised to be seeing the phase rush on Talia here. I would have expected a little bit
What would
more
you
damage
normally-
there. I mean, phase rush isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but just based on the nature of how these lanes have gone, how aggressively back and forth they've been, I would have expected the Comet, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe just feeling like you're not going to be able to put on enough pressure with the Comet to, get that early lead that you kind of would want. And the Oriana is kind of going to scale up regardless, but definitely an interesting choice. We'll track that to see if Alphate is going to get some value out of that phase rush. Personally, my eyes definitely drawn towards the lethal tempo for Yomi down there. Does kind of lead us to believe we are getting the on-hit variety of the Varus this time around. And then, of course, Shy with the Ghost again, just like he had in game number 1 when he was piloting the Mordekaiser. And then Dougie Fresh taking the Unsealed Spellbook on Ornn. A little bit intriguing there as well.
I don't hate the Unsealed Spellbook. It's always been kind of the second most common on Ornn, right behind that Grasp of the Undying, and it just offers so much utility on a champion that's already basically utility personified that there's really no downside to taking it.
In this matchup, though, right, I would think you'd get a ton of value out of the Grasp, just kind of being able to bonk Tom Kench on repeat with your little hammer, get super tanky for those mid-game team fights. But maybe, Dougie Fresh just feeling like the utility that you do get from the spellbook is going to be a little bit more valuable, as we do see the early push in the bot lane from Varus Karma, as to be expected.
Yeah, returning to the top side for a second, though, I think part of it is that Dougie Fresh doesn't want to be up auto-attacking Chai. He doesn't want to be in a spot where he can get that stack of an acquired taste up, where Chai can get those chain stuns off with the tongue. So, if you're not going to be up close, you're not going to be auto-attacking.
Fair enough. Yeah, and it does feel like Chai has kind of gotten the better end of this laning phase for the majority of the night anyways, so I think not opting in for those trades is absolutely a reasonable decision that Dougie Fresh here can make.
But comparatively slow early game here, yeah.
Yeah, very slow early game, very strong scaling on both sides, right? So nothing really, no reason to risk any early flips in skirmishes or anything like that, as both junglers are clearing down towards this bottom lane, and Yomi and Chong Somo are very far extended in Asian here, not level 4 just yet, only 5 camps for the Wukong, is going to get tethered up, does still have the Warrior Trickster available, going to use it now, dashing forward, but Poppy is here for the counter gank. Chong Somo extremely low, the last auto attack, not quite enough, the potion again, saving his life, and it's an Asian who's going to get taken down for first blood. Yomi picks it up, and now Panda Boat and Domination on the retreat. Even Talia moving down to make absolutely sure that that skirmish went the way of SG.
You know, that's what I get for opening my mouth. I said it was a slow game, and suddenly we have a gank, a counter gank, 6 summoner spells blown, just complete chaos all across the map. But it's more fun this way.
We appreciate you providing us with that action also. It's really very much,
Yeah. I appreciate that I was able to astral project my wishes 3 minutes into the past for these teams to understand. It's real good vibes. As Soul Reaver now chugging through Messiah's health bar. That's a great combo there onto an Oriana that now is going to be forced to take a little bit of a nasty back.
Yeah, obviously, Soul Reaver up-tempo on the Wukong after that little bit of a failed gank towards the bottom side, but Nasian, thankfully, able to get towards that North River in time to secure his Shellfish. We'll be able to trade across those Scuttle Crabs. Still the camp behind, though, the Poppy, obviously, as they are going to be, well, I guess an extra camp to farm, as they're even in CS right now.
Yeah, and this does start to make you wonder, as both of these junglers are on the same side, how does this first neutral shape out? Do we see them fighting over the grubs, which Nation is already moving towards? Or does Soul Reaver just give it up and go for that early Chemtech Drake instead?
As we have seen those early neutrals traded, right, in both of the previous games. And it
Mm-hmm.
does appear that that may be the case once again, as the Poppy is not moving really in the direction of this topside river whatsoever, is in fact going for the reset, still needed to get a buy. Didn't have time to do so, as wanted to try to deny that North Scuttle Crab from the Wukong. Of course, not able to do it. But will now go for the reset, able to pick up the Tunneler, and the Grubs will go over to the Monkey.
But now, this has been a very slow take or return from Reaver. There is enough time here that Nation could look to come and contest this Drake and is in fact pinging their way down there. TB coming in from the Ornn as well. They're putting a lot of resources into putting Reaver behind.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a very early teleport from Dougie Fresh to make his way down into this bot lane to try and guarantee this objective. They should be able to do it, but Chai now is fully aware, has vision of the Ornn down there, and should be able to hard shove this wave. Not sure if the Tahm Kench has Demolish or not, but this could mean a turret plate going over, and Chemtech Dragon, not really that great a value.
Yeah, the value you're getting here is in the fact that you're starting to look towards that soul. You're getting the early stacks. You're going to be looking at a 20 or 30 minute soul as opposed to a 30 or 40 minute soul, as it were. And that's a lot of value. But they didn't pick up the third grub either, so this makes it even more imperative that they get the next 3 to get the Twitch chatters.
Very true, yes. On the flip side, Reaver obviously only needing to deny one more grub to prevent that from coming through. So an interesting call, certainly, from Conduit to try and get both of those first neutrals. We'll see if it ends up paying off for them, as the Tahm Kench is already going to have a little bit of a lead in that top lane over the Ornn. Has that little bit of extra gold, got the crash, got the turret plate, and is up a level right now as well.
Yeah, didn't have the Demolish, or else could have maybe even looked for 2 turret plates and been very close to that first fully completed item.
And does, of course, make it back up to the wave in time to pick up the entirety of these minions. There we go. Cannon secured. Gonna gobble that one up. And we return to a relatively calm game state, alls, at least for now.
Yes, very, very nice, slow game. Just 1 kill at 8 minutes. Feels very nice for the scalers on the map. Especially this mid lane where we've barely talked about them at all. Dead even, just 2 minions apart here at 8 minutes, both with fairly respectable farm rates as well.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, when there's no fighting happening, it does get a lot easier to last hit those minions. As this wave, I think, might be frozen. Is this wave frozen on Dougie Fresh here?
Let's
be a little bit difficult if it is. The Ornn would likely fall further behind. I think it might actually be pushing back out. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that'll push out fairly easily here. You're looking for 4 minions on that red side for it to be frozen in Chai's favor when there's no blue minions remaining. So, will not be the case here. Does, though, leave Dougie in a pretty awkward spot for the moment, as Chai can just tongue lash him away from the wave.
Oh, wow, yeah. Good trading here from the tongue of Chai. And yes, it does appear to be, in fact, a slow push that is coming through in this top lane. Chai trying to utilize this time while Dougie Fresh is trying to stay in XP range of the dying minions to get out as much harassment as possible. I think turret diving in Ornn is not necessarily a play that's the most likely to succeed, as Pandaboat, alone underneath this turret right now, does have domination trying to move back over, but the Aphelios getting zoned away a bit from this minion wave, as that was Poppy in the vicinity, putting on a little bit of extra pressure. Now, Wukong able to move over as well and allow Aphelios to walk back up. But we can see the CS differential actually in this bot lane has grown to quite a substantial degree.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we missed that, crewman. That is a just distressingly chaotic CS difference and a huge lead for Yomi. Alongside the kill that they got onto Nation early, this puts Domination into a similarly rough spot as they were in at the start of Game 1. But Alf
Wow,
taking a
look,
lot of
Reaver is
damage.
still there. Definitely a lot of damage from the Orianna, but not quite enough to finish the job. Keeper's Verdict not going to connect. Still going to go for the turret dive, though. As the Domination pushed back towards Yomi, taking a lot of damage, but able to survive for now. And Chong Somo getting traded back on pretty nicely. It is red-white for the Aphelios, so he's able to hang in there underneath the turret, get a little bit of sustain from the Severum. Hanging on for now. A lot of time committed by Reaver, but they are putting on a lot of pressure.
Yeah, they're going to be able to stop the back as well. Force Panda Boat to walk away. That's going to be even more plates in the pocket of Yomi. But look at what they're potentially giving up. That is going to be grubs on spawn by Nation here.
Yeah, looking like the Twitch chatters may be arriving onto the Rift for the first time tonight, potentially. As the Ornn is really taking quite a beating up there in the top lane. He is just getting licked so much by this Tahm Kench. Is going to go back to base and does have the teleport back off cooldown from that earlier play. Actually going to elect, it looks like, to hang on to it for now as Alphane has moved over. Oh, and an Asian flashes into a wall. Does thankfully still have the W to get himself out to safety, but it looks like I spoke too soon, alls, as the last grub here will be denied, and we will not see those little mites in this game.
That feels real unfortunate for Conduit. That would have been some great pushing power to try and take back a little bit of this lane narrative after top and bot so strongly in favor of SG through this early game.
Oh, Dougie Fresh is here again? He's just here for every Dragonals. Okay, and the Tahm Kench is going to be like, I've got an Unleashed teleport now. It's my time to shine. He's going to arrive as well. Soul Reaver off alone, though, on the flank, going to get chunked down so severely. Has to flash away from that very scary Orianna as the Call of the Forge God will come out. Does manage to get that knock up onto the Talia, and now Wukong into the back line. He's put on a leash, though. He's going to get rooted up by the Karma flashing forward as Dougie Fresh is not able to get any last hits, though, and the front line still standing for the side of SG. Proton as they push back Conduit and look to secure their first dragon. The Trunks wants to be a little bit careful to not go too far forward. The Aphelios damage is not there quite yet. Not going to be able to finish off the Karma, and the dragon does get secured.
That feels really unfortunate in hindsight for Conduit there, because yes, Messiah was able to chase away Reaver. They had him down to about 200 health, but it cost everything. It cost that shockwave, and without the shockwave, SG was completely happy grouping up. Sure, they were going to take the Ornhorn, but there wasn't anything to follow it, and you can see with all those blinking health bars just how valuable it would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. It was close call, but you know, this time, this is kind of the criticism that we had of a lot of the fights for SG in the previous game, right? As the engage was there, we saw N-Asian's Wukong actually get onto that backline and try to threaten the carries of SG, but the follow-up from Orianna and Aphelios just wasn't able to come through. They just weren't in position to actually get out that extra little bit of damage, like you were saying. And the team fight does end up going the way of Subatomic Gaming, able to pick up their first dragon as well. Now sitting on a little over 3K, 3.5K is the gold lead. But of course, this is what they had in the previous game as well, and we all know how that ended.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Instead of it being on Soul Reaver, on a champion that falls off, 2,600 of that 3,000 gold advantage is on this bot lane. It's Yomi and Chong Somo who are holding the lead here, courtesy large part of that turret that they took down so very early. But it means that the gold is already in the right place. They don't have to waste time trying to redistribute it.
Very true. Very, very true. That is in the pros column for Subatomic Gaming and any SG fans out there. So it should be, in theory, a relatively more straightforward affair to take this lead and snowball it into the mid-game. They are going to be able to secure Shelly here right just after 14 minutes. Just as she arrives onto the Rift, she's immediately shanghaied into service by SG.
And they might just look to drop it immediately here into the mid lane. Yes, in fact, it is channeled. They want to go ahead, continue this turret-breaking spree from the bot lane all the way up the map. And I do believe they will take this with ease, crewman.
Indeed. That is second turret of the game now, going the way of SG. No turrets, of course, secured just yet for the side of Conduit. As, yeah, Dougie Fresh, when he's in the lane, he's underneath the turret, generally speaking, is how this one has been going.
And when he's out of the lane, the wave is underneath the turret. He just cannot
Yes.
win.
And the turret is being licked at an increasingly rapid rate.
Yes.
Is really what's going on. As the spectator camera is trolling us a little bit, I don't think we necessarily have to spend this much time watching the top lane. That was a nice knock up from the Ornn, and Try's going to take like 4 turret shots for fun.
No. Top lane is important. It's very, very valuable for the rest of League to see how the other side of the map lives. The side that nobody cares about. The side that is left on an island forever. Is it clear that I've been reading too much poetry recently?
Kill pressure, overrated. Who cares about that?
Wet
We want to
noodles.
see licking. That is what we care about.
All right, let's consider a different kind of phraseology here, crewman, shall we?
It's just hard, man. It's what's on my screen. What else am I going to talk about? Okay, thankfully, we are now taking a look at Aphelios. Okay, we're back.
I guess this lane is
Okay,
important.
that is going to be an
trouble.
Ornn. That's more than a lick. That's a complete consumption of the Ornn. He's desperately trying to charge searingly back towards his turret as an Asian. Has found strong Solmo in the jungle. The Karma's getting chunked down pretty low. In comes the Tomcat. Already used the ultimate, remember, but it might not matter as, yeah, the follow-up is there from the Varus. Yomi ghosting into that play as the last hit, though, does go over to the very hungry Catfish.
I guess waiting is the better part of entertainment here, crewman, as all the focus on Chai finally pays off. Utterly, incredibly large at this point, already has almost 150 stacks on that Heartsteel. He is difficult to cut through, and it is only going to get worse.
Yes, indeed. And now let's see. We have another dragon spawning, so I have to imagine that is going to mean the top laners will migrate to the southern portion of the map, which does mean, Alls, that we are going to get some additional champions on our screen, which is extraordinarily exciting. It is going to be our first Infernal Dragon of the game, an Infernal Soul once again, just like we had in game number 1. And once again, I think it would be extremely powerful for whichever team is able to pick it up. As,
This is interesting here, crewman. In fact,
Yes,
Conduit is not going for the Drake at all. They're trying to pressure Chai off this turret, which is very intelligent. Chai has the TP. Dougie Fresh does not. So you need to play towards your TP-less laner. But this is a lot of value that they're not getting with that Drake. This turret will have to be very valuable for them in the long term to match the power that Soul Reaver is going to get off of that take there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. The fact that the teleport differential was there for the top laners meant that it would not have been a fair fight for the side of Conduit, right? So ultimately, I think it is an intelligent decision from them to go for the cross map, get themselves their first turret of the game, right? But they are losing out now in this bot lane as Alphate's Talia is able to get quite a lot of damage onto this tier 2. Charge into the wall, does get some damage on Messiah as well, but red-white for the Aphelios domination, ghosting forward, but cannot continue. Poppy staring him down, daring him to try and get that kill onto the Talia, and he will respect the presence of the Poppy.
Yeah, you know, the funniest thing of that whole topside endeavor, they didn't put any meaningful damage onto Chai with 4 members there.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, that I don't think was the goal, to be fair. But yes, I mean, if that was the goal, I don't think it necessarily would have worked out in their favor.
All jokes aside here, though, Alf able to put that pressure up in the bot lane, having that second tier turret a little bit less healthy means that if they send the TK over there at any point, pushing into Dougie Fresh as they rotate over to that lane, it's going to be hard for him to stay for long.
From the
as
Ornn,
Dougie's
still
locked
going to
up.
get hit by the tether. That is a lot of damage coming through. Flash over the wall, though, for Nation. Looking to defend the top laner. Going to get both with the R2 as well. Call the Forge God comes out and the teleport in for Messiah. And the cavalry arrives from Conduit. They punish the aggressive move from the top end support of SG and find themselves a couple of quick kills. Their first 2 kills, actually, of the game.
Both of them going over to Messiah as well. That's a great gold injection for this Orianna, who has a lot of pressure on her to be very front and center in this game.
Yeah, really, really big that the Orianna does get both of those kills. As you say, probably going to have her second item completed on, unless she based immediately after that fight, which she may have.
She did base
But
immediately.
yeah,
Doesn't have a ton of gold in the pocket.
yes, still relatively close to that second item completion, which is going to feel really fantastic for the next dragon fight in about 2.5 minutes, where Conduit absolutely need to contest for this one, right? You do not want to be given over Infernal Soul Point for free to a Varus.
No, absolutely not. Especially not a Varus that is 2 items deep and will only be getting stronger here. He will be churning out the damage, cutting through Dougie Fresh and Nation here in these extended fights.
Yeah, did obviously go for that on-hit build that we were predicting earlier due to the lethal tempo choice in the runes, and is already extremely powerful on that 2-item spike. Is currently in the top lane, looking to finish what Chai started on that tier 1, and there it goes. Turret number 3 for SG. And the rotation now coming up, a little bit delayed perhaps, but Conduit rather, going to be moving up now to make sure that that push does not continue.
And perhaps more importantly, to make sure that it doesn't transition into a Baron here. With all 5 members of SG in the area, they could have very easily looked to try and take that down, but with just 3 or 4 in the area, it makes it a little bit more of a danger. Dougie Fresh could, even though he's so far behind, find that miracle engage with the Ornhorn and leave Messiah and Domination to wreck the backline.
Certainly a possibility. Is holding the exhaust right now from his spellbook to potentially use in a team fight situation. I don't think you're going to get very much value out of that if you cast it on the Tahm Kench. So definitely hoping to find another target, I think, is Dougie for that one.
Although it could still be valuable on the Tahm Kench, leaving you to run straight around him and get onto that juicy backline instead. But you're right, there are definitely better targets to look for. Likely onto Yomi or Soul Reaver here.
Yeah. As it does seem like there's a decent amount of control on the map right now for the side of SG. We are 30 seconds out now on that dragon spawning. Orianna did complete her second item. Felios, though, not quite there yet. I have to wonder. I mean, Wukong's in the river right now, and Nation clearly trying to stake a claim on this territory, but mid control goes to SG, and it's their turn to move in.
And my question is, would SG be willing to give up this Drake, make a big show of posturing down here, trying to draw Conduit in, and then turn and burn up to that Baron, take that and get the wave pressure to be able to make the Drake take Worthless?
Yeah, I mean, they do have the control ward on it right now, so I think that is, you know, a valid play that they could go for. I don't necessarily know if they will, as they are still hanging around towards this bot side as an Asian starts up the objective. Teleport in for the Tahm Kench as this becomes an honest 5v5. Nice shove! An Asian chunked down already. He is forced to retreat as Chai now on the front lines. Pretty good steadfast presence there to deny the regain, but the Moonlight Vigil over the wall does so much damage, absolutely bursting down those health bars. Only 1 kill so far, though, and an Asian blinking, retreating still, but the team fight, they've managed to turn it around, and Conduit managed to get 3 for 0 at the start of this one. Alfade on the run, Aphelios almost able to pick up that kill as well, and it looked dangerous for a moment there. It was definitely SG striking first, but that damage from Domination, 2 items be damned, he's already packing a punch.
Yeah, turns out there are a lot of spells on this Conduit roster that work quite well in choke points. If it's not the Orianna Ball, it's not the Ornhorn, you still have to worry about that red Moonlight Vigil. And it shredded through the health bars so efficiently there. There was nothing left, even off of that one spell, and it just completely ruined the ability of SG to follow up at all. Chai forced to use that Devour defensively. Yomi and Alfie zoned so far away from the fight as Soul Reaver was unable to stand in front of them. And you just, again, have to wonder why SG sometimes forgets how to position and how to shot call in these fights.
Yeah. It's especially crazy, too, because Messiah's Shockwave actually came off cooldown just a short time after that fight. So the Shockwave wasn't even relevant there. I would love to see, like, a damage graph. I mean, obviously, I know that's not possible, but I feel like all of that work was just being done by the Aphelios in that last fight, just getting out so much DPS over the wall there, plus the ultimate, obviously, doing so much work. Definitely eyes on domination going forward in this one if he's going to be able to continue to put out damage like that in the team fights. And this could very well be Conduit with the comeback.
Yeah, and it only gets worse from here because the Aphelios now has that Infinity Edge, is going to be dealing more damage, but this is a sneaky Baron. This is no vision here from red side. Nation not even worried, taking his rocks as the Baron's taken out from
Oh my
under
god,
his
it's
nose.
just gone. The damage from the lethality Varus is just too much. They shred through it. And as you say, All's Conduit, we're none the wiser.
Well, that is a breath of life for SG, a desperately needed one after a couple of rough fights that took the wind out of their sails. They've still got about a 3,000 gold lead. They've still got the pressure. So now it's up to them to kind of secure some of this standing gold on the map. There's 3 inner turrets still available. And if they can find somebody to catch out in rotation here to make the numbers advantage even stronger, all the sweeter.
Yeah. Definitely a bold call, one that paid off for the side of SG. But now the big question, right? What can you get with the Baron buff? Because it's going to time out right around when the next dragon spawns in about 2.5 minutes. If you're able to transition this Baron into complete map control, into Infernal Soul Point, then I think you found yourself back in the driver's seat of this game. But I think, still takes a little bit of doing from here.
Yeah, it's not easy. You have to spend these next 2 minutes putting yourself in a position where you have the undisputed control over the Drake Pit. Chai getting a good push out on the top side is a great way to start that, but they need pressure elsewhere. It can't just be Chai, and that's why he was forced to back off there. He had to wait for the rest of these members to push up in the mid lane and give him something to play off of.
Yeah, critically important for Baron plays, right, is to make sure that everybody is pushing at the same time, you're on the same page, you're coordinated, moving forward together, putting on that pressure in multiple lanes. That is how you want your Baron power plays to go. And, Chai moving now towards the bot lane. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get that one shoved up. In the meantime, 4 members strong, SG in mid, looking to get at least a little bit of chip damage down onto this mid tier 2.
And less than stellar so far, though.
Yeah, doing well, slow but steady, right? They're getting this damage into the turrets. They're controlling the map.
I was taking that the other way, less than stellar. I don't think they're doing a great job of this. I think they need to be pushing the tempo a little bit harder here, making more use of this Baron to make it not at all possible for Conduit to try and contest this Drake. As it is right now, they're not pushed back into their base. There's not a whole lot that's being taken off of the map from this Baron. They're only now breaking open the turrets. But with 30 seconds left, they only have one more wave. They're not going to be able to even touch these inhibitor turrets.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider as well is, like, yes, at least they did just get those 2 turrets, but they don't really have time to go back to base and spend the gold. I mean, they could go back to base, but that's completely leaving this bot side river then undefended to allow Conduit to get back in and establish some vision for themselves. They are going to send back at least Chai, who has the teleport, as well as Karma to replenish those wards. Everybody else going to be hanging around towards this bot side river to try and keep up this vision line, but here they come. Conduit's starting to move in.
And it's just Alf and Soul Reaver here for now, so there is some space.
Oh, we've caught out an
Asian
Asian. He's going to have to flash to get away from the Talia. That's a big cooldown. Still holding on to the Cyclone, though.
And now, finally, all 4 members here for SG. Now they can start pressuring towards this Drake, and Yomi's going to burn it down very quickly with those auto attacks. Nation needs to find an angle in.
Yeah, how can he do it? How can he find it? This is where they won the team fight previously. Oh, it's just gone. The Dragon's dead, and Asian was not able to get into the pit. The Keeper's Verdict is going to eject the Orianna, and the side of Conduit will be able to back away and opt out of the team fight. Meanwhile, Chai wasn't even there. Just pushing top lane, happy as a catfish can be.
Yeah, Conduit walked that a lot slower than I think SG expected. They were ready for the TP play. They were ready to have the TK flank and actually have to fight that out. But Oof, Messiah just barely missing that one.
Yeah.
I don't
Does
quite
get the flash.
understand why Conduit was so scared of this team, yet you at some point have to pull the trigger, and I think that was a very good option. You had the 4 seconds of the TP channel to get a ton done.
Yeah, I mean, I think they likely must have seen the Tom Kench on the top wave, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But I think a lot of it did come down to the fact that the Wukong was a little bit caught out right before the objective spawned, right? Forced to blow his flash, pushed away kind of from that main entrance in that brush next to the mid lane, and kind of went all the way around to try and find an angle to get into the river, and it just took too much time for the Wukong to walk all the way through the jungle like that. And as you previously highlighted, the on-hit Varus damage just basically one-shot the dragon. It's just gone.
Yeah, it was a very fast take from Yomi, and now we see Conduit taking their time getting back out on the map again. They have no vision up towards this top side of the river. They have no way of knowing what's going on around Baron, and with 30-odd seconds left until it comes up, they might just lose this neutral objective too, just like that.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a concern for Conduit fans, that this second Baron could go the same way as the first. As we see SG moving into the enemy jungle, clearing out some vision, trying to make it difficult for Conduit to approach.
And they're doing a good job. They're kind of trapped there in that raptor pit. It's very difficult to walk up with the Poppy just hanging there in the background, ready to defend Chong Solmos. So no vision here, no way of knowing what's going on in this Baron. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Soul Reaver and Yomi peel off to try and sneak this.
Absolutely. And Tom Kench with priority in the top lane matchup, as he has had all game long, just pushing in this Ornn over and over and over again. There's the heroic charge, gets the monkey into the wall, and Asian, he does go for the Cyclone. The Shockwave is okay, but the Wukong is going down so extremely low.
DP was canceled.
Yeah, oh, okay. That is a teleport canceled on the Tom Kench, and Ornn still has his. He's going to be able to flash away as well, so that is a big cooldown. Also blown by Dougie. But ultimately, you know, it is Conduit able to hold the line here in mid lane.
Yeah, a little bit awkward for SG. They had some fairly good opportunities there, but the final nail in the coffin was that good TP cancel by Dougie Fresh, flashing in to make sure that it connected, because if Chai had gotten there, they were looking to re-engage that fight, to go back in onto Nation and Messiah and try and blow open a hole for this Baron.
Yeah, and I think matching the TP wouldn't have been necessarily the greatest of calls, right? Because the Tom Kench is so much stronger. Like, yes, you have the Ornn Horn to try and you know, go for that re-engage, but it's really better as a setup tool. In the middle of a team fight, it's hard to get as much value out of that as Weaver's Wall into the mid lane. Soul Reaver cannot quite get the Aphelios into the wall. The Seismic Shove's not going to connect either. Teleport, oh, that Chain of Corruption lands, and that's going to have to be the cleanse flash away from Panda Boat. So there are some tools getting blown, but nobody goes down critically for Conduit.
Nobody goes down, but that's a lot of resets force. There is a small window here if Chong Solmo can clear out the vision, but instead it looks like SG just wants to pressure this wave in and get their chance to back out and prepare for the Infernal Soul in about 45 seconds.
Yeah, definitely map control going back over to SG after that one. And you have to imagine that, as you say, the Infernal Soul will be the target here. You're so much stronger once you are able to secure that buff. It's also less risky to take, right? You don't have the Baron debuff that you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about the Aphelios poke over the back of the wall. So, as we can see, SG moving towards this South River. Same strategy, right? Try and push it into the enemy jungle, zone them away, prevent them from being able to check the objective, prevent them from walking forward, and then just tread through it with the Varus.
Yeah, and speaking of that Varus, I want to talk about these level advantages. Chai already nearly level 18, his Gav is just barely 15. Yomi is 16. Domination hasn't even hit level 14
God
yet.
not going to be communed with, as the Ornn is currently in the Tom Kench's belly, and Asian moving forward, trying to find something here before his Tom Kench, or the Ornn goes down. They're able to get the first kill, actually, onto Karma. Cyclone flashing into the back line. Here, looking to take down Reaver next. They do manage to get that
Varus
kill.
is taking
Chai's
the Drake.
finally able to finish off the Ornn, but Conduit would have managed to win out on the other side of the fight. Now Yomi flashes away, and Asian barely stays alive. as he almost was able to get that kill. If they
Look at
managed
Chai
to take down the
behind.
Varus as well, that would seal the deal. But now Chai on the flank angle, hoping to take down N-Asian as well. The Wukong on the blinking health bar already used ult and flash. Can't really fight right now at all. The only saving grace for Conduit is they were able to take down the enemy jungler. But I feel like SG could just walk back to that dragon. I mean, you know
It's
Wukong
already
can't
taken.
be there.
They took it. Yomi took it instead of
Oh.
being a part of that fight.
Well, I didn't even realize they took it so fast. So that is absolutely massive. Now, SG in so much control now. They only have the Baron to play for. They did lose out the extra kill, but I think that's well worth securing the Infernal Soul.
Yeah, the Infernal Soul, so powerful here. And you know that you can get Reaver back on the map, start looking at that Baron here. Once Alf and Yomi have reset, have spent the gold that they've racked up, I don't think there's a whole lot that Conduit can do except try and play defensively, try and get enough wards down that maybe Nation can get a steal, but you're not going to win the 5v5 team fight when Yomi's not AFK for half of it, fighting the dragon.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate for Conduit too, right? Because that's what they drafted for. They drafted for the 5v5, for the straight-up team fight, where you lock eyes with your opponent, you send the front line forward, and you get your carries to start outputting damage. But as you say, you know, going up against Infernal Soul, that doesn't really feel like a winning strategy anymore. They're going to have to come up with something else.
Yeah, that's something else for now. Just pushing out, trying to find some vision here, some way to prepare for what will likely be the final fight. As crewmen, we are 37 minutes into the game. These have been fairly long, drawn-out games as both these teams trying their hardest to take this Week 1 victory. And here comes the start.
Here it comes. The Forge God going to be denied again by the Steadfast Presence this time. His Keeper's Verdict is absolutely massive. He gets 3 with the hammer, stuns the Ornn into the wall. It is the front line still here. It's going to take a while to take him down. Oh, that's going to be the melee on full start. The shove still connects onto the Aphelios. The Moonlight Vigil does a lot of work on the counterattack for Conduit, but Chai now moving in on the Tomcat. She's so tanky. Look at that health bar, and the Aphelios ultimate has already been utilized. Look, the health bar is going down. Oh, that's a good shockwave. That's the Tomcat ultimate forced now out as well to keep the jungler alive, as so many ultimate abilities used there, but the teams still stared each other down. Nobody is dead just yet. Nation getting to the Warrior Trickster, looking to move forward, trying to get onto this backline, not quite able to close the distance, as Sol Reaver is also extremely low. A lot of low health bars on both sides. Triple knockup from Chai. Is that going to be enough to win the fight? The shove backward onto Dougie Fresh. He's living for so long, but not long enough. That extra little bit of damage from Infernal Soul making the difference. And now finally, a man advantage for SG Proton as they start to move forward. Tom Kench aggressively diving forward once again, gets the knock up onto Pandaboat, and one more lick will seal the deal. Aphelios is down, and I think that's gonna do it, folks. SG Proton, they come back in game 3, and they will take their first win of season 11.
Hey, crewman, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a conduit?
Chai knows. I couldn't tell you, but I think Chai has the answer.
Yeah, they found it in this game. Good grief. Chai, game 1 and game 3, just carrying as the big tank. Doesn't matter if you do the most damage as long as you never die. And beautiful, beautiful game, and great way to end this series for SG Proton.
Absolutely. And, you know, we saw kind of both of these compositions living out their fantasy in that last team fight. It felt like with these drafts, that was kind of the moment that both teams had been waiting for all game. But Infernal Soul was the difference, right? It was just that little bit of extra damage, you know, those extra procs that we saw popping off at the end there, getting those kills onto the Conduit members. And that's that kind of the risk you run when you draft for late game, right? When you draft for team fight, you know, if you do end up going against a similar composition, you fall behind, you just kind of run out of options.
Yeah, absolutely. And the options were already so limited. I mean, look at the damage charts. It was Messiah and Domination and nobody else. You weren't getting anything except for Peel and Disruption from the other members. So that gave SG very, very easy, very clear marks on who they needed to target first.
Yeah, it was very straightforward, right? Even just coming out of the draft phase, it was very, very clear how these compositions were going to play. And in the end, it was SG that were the better team on the Rift tonight. It has already turned into a pretty late one, alls. I think we could get right into POG if you're feeling up for it. What are you leaning towards here for this third and final game?
I mean, I think I already hinted at it at the end of the game. I think it has to go to our wonderful, wonderful TK here.
Yeah,
I'm giving
Chai
my player of
had
the game
a
to
pretty
Chai.
solid night overall, but go ahead and elaborate.
No, I
reason
think
why.
that's about it. Just tanks OP.
It's a top laner after your own heart, huh? Just locking in those tanky
It's
boys,
beautiful.
be in front line.
It's all you gotta do to win games in League of Legends. You just play tanks. I'm not coping.
Yeah.
I swear I'm not coping. Don't look at my match history. I'm not coping.
I mean, I think it's pretty fair, honestly, in coordinated play like this. Being if you have the better front line, then that can absolutely be the difference. And I think, I was kind of going against you in game number 1. You also had the Chai vote there as well. I was looking more towards Chong Solmo. I believe on the Braum was Chong Solmo in game number 1. I thought he had a pretty good game there. This time around, I think I gotta align with you. I think we got to give it to Chai for sure. It had so much pressure all game long, was just keeping the Ornn under his turret permanently, and just had a bigger impact kind of in the fights as a result, right? Had the bigger economy. He was the bigger front line. He was the difference maker, I think, in this game 3 especially.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Do you have any other final thoughts, Alls? Anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think that's all there is to say, crewman. I think that the series speaks for itself.
I think so. Yeah, big congrats, of course, to Subatomic Gaming Proton on their first win of the season. I'm sure, hoping for many more for them. And commiserations, of course, to Conduit You Mad, but we are also very, very excited to see them bounce back and pick up some wins later on down the line as well. But that is going to pretty much do it for our week 1 coverage of BOL Plat Season 11, guys. From myself, from Alls, from the entire production team at Blue Otter, thank you everybody very much for watching, and we'll see you next week for week 2 of the Plat League. Good night.